Good afternoon, everybody. Good afternoon. Welcome to the House Environment and Transportation Committee. We have 11 bill hearings this afternoon. We are going to start with HB 513, introduced by the Speaker on behalf of the Lieutenant Governor and the administration. Motor Vehicles Work Zone Speed Control Systems, Maryland Road Worker Protection Act of 2024. Let's welcome Lieutenant Governor Miller back to the House of Delegates. Come on up with your panel.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for having me here. If it's all right with you, I'd like to bring my panel up as well. You're welcome. So thank you, Mr. Chairman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the Transportation Environment Committee. I am thrilled to be back in the House in front of your committee. I'm Maruna Miller, Lieutenant Governor of Maryland. I'm testifying in support of the Moore-Miller administration's House Bill 513, Maryland Road Worker Protection Act. Across Maryland, on any given day, there are approximately 300 construction sites with 1,000 dedicated roadway workers. Last year, there were 1,200 work zone crashes. That's over 3 crashes every single day. So for the people who work on these sites, it's not a matter of if they will experience a crash on their job site, it's a matter of when. I spent 25 years in my career as a transportation engineer, and I've been on these construction sites, and let me tell you, it's incredibly dangerous. House Bill 513 protects the men and women who place themselves in harm's way on the front line of service. It is a moral imperative that we protect road workers who provide critical public service that we each benefit from. This is how we make Maryland a state that serves. In March 2023, the work zone crash on Interstate 695 instantly killed 6 workers. 2 of the victims were a father and a son, Malon and MJ Simmons. I'm honored to be joined by their loved ones today. Soon after the tragic crash, Governor Moore established a work zone safety group. We assembled a diverse team, including MDOT administrators, highway engineers, safety inspectors, law enforcement, labor, and construction workers. We're also deeply grateful to have had the participation of ENT member Delegate Ziegler, as well as Senator Kelly. To spark a culture change among drivers and curb reckless driving and speeding, the Work Zone Safety Group recommended that a strategy that included education, engineering, and enforcement be implemented. House Bill 513, the Maryland Road Worker Protection Act, focuses on the enforcement piece. The use of automated speed enforcement systems, otherwise known as speed cameras, in work zones was approved by the Maryland General Assembly in 2009. The bill utilizes technologies that weren't available 15 years ago and strengthens enforcement in order to change driver behavior. House Bill 513 proposes the following: removing the requirement that speed camera be manned by a person physically at the work site, allowing multiple speed cameras to be utilized throughout the entirety of the work zone. But the bill includes a provision that prevents drivers from receiving multiple fines within a single work zone. Studies have shown that work zones with multiple speed cameras throughout a work zone are more effective in reducing speeds and crashes than work zones with a single camera that only slows a driver at a single point in time. Maryland's work zone citations amount is currently the lowest in the nation at $40. House Bill 513 raises the amount to $290. This amount is not random. This is the same citation amount a driver would receive when pulled over by a law enforcement officer violating a speed within the work zone. Revenue collected through the work zone speed cameras will be reinvested into highway work zones and safety initiatives. And finally, we are proposing an amendment that would expand the eligibility of the work zone speed camera systems to more locally maintained roadways and permit local governments to utilize revenue from their work zone speed camera systems for local public and roadway safety projects. The people of Maryland stand with us in their support for these actions. As part of the work group, we administered a public survey on what it would take to change their driving behavior. And of the 2,200 respondents, 66% said that increased citation amounts for speeding in work zones would change their driving behavior. We know enforcement alone is not enough to make this culture change. MDOT has already invested $500,000 on an aggressive public safety awareness campaign to educate drivers, and we're not done yet. We need to bring a culture change in driver behavior. We know that it can be done because it's been done before. The culture change surrounding drivers wearing seatbelts looked very different just 35 years ago. But through education, engineering, and enforcement, the culture changed, and today, usage exceeds over 90% compliance. We can do the same with work zones. However, the impact of culture change we're creating goes beyond just work zones. Safer driving in work zones will lead to safer driving everywhere. By intercepting dangerous driving habits, we can lower the number of crashes and fatalities across Maryland roads, making it safer for state road workers, motorists, passengers, cyclists, and pedestrians. I ask for your favorable report on House Bill 531. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. Do you want your panelists to speak and then we can do some questions?
Sure, that'd be okay, Mr.
Great.
Chairman. Thank you.
Please proceed.
Chair Corman and committee, thank you for allowing me to testify today on behalf of this bill. I'm Terry Seuss, Deputy Administrator of Operations for the Maryland State Highway Administration. I had the honor of being part of the Governor's Work Zone Safety Work Group. The group was comprised of 29 individuals with diverse experience, and we split into two groups. The Driver Behavior Subcommittee focused on educating drivers to slow down, move over, drive sober, and avoid distraction. The same types of good decisions that help drivers keep themselves and other roadway users safe as well. This time with a special emphasis on the changing conditions and vulnerable workers within a work zone. The Roadway Operations Subcommittee focused on planning, designing, and operating of work zones. We discussed many aspects, including best practices, training, as well as exploring the latest technology available. To offer some context on the size of this challenge, on an average day, there are 300 work zones on Maryland state roads with 1,000 individuals working in these areas. They are building our transportation infrastructure, performing maintenance activities, or providing critical utility services. In 2023, there were more than 1,200 crashes in work zones, including 8 worker fatalities and another 20 workers injured as a result. Between the two work groups, we covered the trifecta of education, engineering, and enforcement. Many of these recommendations relevant to the State Highway Administration are already implemented or are underway. These include instill a culture of safety among our teams. Our people are our priority, and we must consistently reinforce that. One way we are doing this is for every operation to hold a morning huddle or tailgate talk to inform the crew members of the work plan and the potential dangers. We are updating and adding new trainings and certifications to ensure the most up-to-date standards, guidance, and best practices are being implemented statewide. When possible, we can plan to close a roadway and detour traffic or close lanes by coordinating with communities and businesses. And we are using innovations such as automated flagger devices and smart work zones, which alert drivers that they are approaching a work area. No matter how good we get at the engineering side, we know there will still be large risks if drivers are driving aggressively, impaired, or distracted. The Driver Behavior Subcommittee came up with many great ideas to inform and educate drivers on the complexity of work zones and the importance of driving safely. And Governor Moore announced funding to help with these important efforts. However, the third E, enforcement, is also a needed strategy. Maryland State Police have been a great partner, and a live officer is our best form of enforcement. But this is a limited resource, and the officer is also at risk on the side of the highway. We are asking for your assistance today to supplement the enforcement efforts with revised automated speed enforcement legislation. This bill provides greatly needed flexibility to use a manned or unmanned camera in work zones and increase our deployments to help ensure safer speeds in work zones. Through these multiple efforts with education, engineering, and enforcement, we can start to make our work zones safer, and those people that travel through them, but especially the workers building and maintaining our critical infrastructure, will be safer. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and the members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. It's good to be back here in this committee room again in this session. Thank you for allowing me to testify on House Bill 513, Motor Vehicles Work Zone Speed Control System Revisions, also known as the Maryland Road Workers Protection Act of 2024. For the record, I'm Safer Tool, Deputy Legislative Officer for Governor Westmore. We have heard from Madam Lieutenant Governor as well as the SHA Deputy Administrator about the seriousness of this matter in front of us. Protecting our road workers who wake up every morning, don on their reflective high-vis vests, and show up to do the vital work to improve and maintain our roads. This legislation is based on a comprehensive set of recommendations from the Work Zone Safety Work Group that was tasked with finding solutions to protect our roadway workers and change the driving culture here in Maryland. So at this point, I will highlight a few key parts of the bill. First, the bill increases fines for work zone speeding violations. Maryland has one of the lowest in the nation work zone automated speed enforcement citation. And this bill aims to increase that to $290, which is in par with someone who's been stopped by for the same violation by a police officer. For repeat offenders with 3 or more citations, the fine amount would be up to $1,000. Second, this legislation expands the enforcement flexibility by authorizing multiple cameras in one single work zone area, allowing to remote or automation in the control system, and eliminating the 30-day warning period requirement. Third, this bill aims to prevent drivers from being cited multiple times for speeding through the single work zone. And lastly, the bill reinvests the additional revenue generated by increased citations in the programs designed to change driver behavior and supports the much needed additional law enforcement and equipment resources in work zone. The administration is offering several amendments to this bill. A few of them are authorizing counties and local jurisdictions to receive revenue from a work zone speed camera that they set up, and expanding the number of roadways eligible for work zone safety speeding cameras as well. The goal here is to shift a dangerous driving behavior trend that we are seeing now that could unalterably change the life of a roadway worker who just showed up to do their job. With that, I respectfully request a favorable committee report. I'm happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions to the Lieutenant Governor or her panel? Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Lieutenant Governor. Good to see you again.
Great
for
to
this
see
very
you.
important bill. I just want to make sure I clarify and understand something correctly. So via the amendment, the technical changes are going to go further than just the work zone, and will allow counties or municipalities to have speed cameras on different roads more, I'd say, away from just school zones. Am I reading that correctly?
Delegate Morgan, how we are proposing this is that it would be only on work zone areas. along local roadways that are posted 45 miles an hour or more.
Okay, so they'll bill exclusively for work zones and nothing else.
Exactly.
Thank you.
Delegate Baker.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you all for bringing this bill forward. Just a comment, most people in my district don't make $290 a day.
Yeah.
So that made me think a little bit on that amount of money. And I do think many of the people that don't obey, I shouldn't say obey, but go through the work zone areas, they might have a lot on their mind. It might be their family that day. They might have a child sick at home. They don't get the benefits of going or having leave off of work and so forth. So the $290 did kind of affect me. So my question is, the companies that put these cameras up, monitor them, maintain them, what percentage of that money will they receive?
Do you know that?
Sure. Thank you for your question. So we pay, we have a contract with a contractor, and we pay for that contract. They do not receive a cost for the citations. We have a 5-year contract with them, and which is bid out competitively, and they receive the revenue from that contract, not per citation. And we cover administrative costs, and then the revenue, as Lieutenant Governor said, currently some of it goes to the state police, and additional revenue would come back to work zone safety.
So with this bill moving forward, will that change the language in their contract to where they'll get 30, 40, 50% of this money? Because I know some of the camera companies get a percentage of the citation. And I would like to think if there's going to be a lot of money to be made for the camera companies, it would be time that the state look at having their own employees put the cameras out and do the work on them necessary to keep them certified. Because I would like to know how much money they're going to be receiving from this bill. That would be important to me.
Sure. So approximately the administrative cost of the program, which includes our fees to the contractor, are about $5 million per year. This includes costs to pay the Maryland State Police and MDTA police to review the citations. That pays the salaries and fringe benefits for state employees who are in charge of the program. And it pays for the vendor payments to the contractor as well.
So that's going to be their approximate total for all of the highways. I forget the number you had mentioned that we have classified as work zones. So that one fee will take care of all of those highways and work zone areas.
Well, so that is for our current number of deployments. So if we increase the number of deployments with the flexibility in this bill, we would expect to have a new contract based on the number of cameras or deployments that would be using, but it would be approximately within an order.
Again, I think it would be good for me to see if the state could recoup more of that amount that you're trying to get to, or try to. I'd just like to see the maximum amount of money stay in the state of Maryland.
Yes.
So if that means getting our state roads people or whoever, getting them the training, I think that would be worth looking into, in my opinion.
Thank you.
And I do I hope you think about people in Western Maryland. $290,000 or $290 is a lot of money.
Dr.
Thank you.
Baker, I always think of folks from Western Maryland.
Well, then
Those
let's
are
get
some-
81 done.
No, but to further follow up on Administrative Seuss here, regarding the speed cameras, currently they have to be manned. So that's part of the fees that go in. That means you have to have a physical person there holding the camera, and that's the tickets that you would get, right? This, the proposal we're saying is to have it unmanned. So possibly the fees associated with deploying these cameras could actually go down when it comes to contractors, because now we're just talking about a camera being there as opposed to an individual holding the camera and utilizing it.
Thank you.
Delegate Long.
Thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor, for being here. I support this bill. I think it's a great bill. I have a question referencing the amendment that Safe referenced for counties and allowing them to receive revenue for cameras they've set up and established. Has there been any thought referencing putting parameters and guidelines about how the counties have to actually spend that money and where they can put its awards? For example, some counties have issues with their maintenance of effort or maintaining their local roadways. And so could it be possible, are you amenable to jurisdictions having red tape on where they have to put that revenue towards?
That's a great question, Delegate Long. Thank you. So our intention is for any cameras that are going to be deployed at local county roadways or municipalities, they need to use the revenue that's generated the same exact way we, the state, would be utilizing it, which is that it would go directly into making our work zones safer. And if necessary, also with law enforcement to be able to have, officers to physically be on the roadways and issuing citations. That's all it would go to and nowhere else.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Naraki.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's good to see you, Lieutenant Governor. First of all, I want to thank you for the dialogue that we've had ongoing throughout this. It's been very helpful. My question is, and it's not a curveball, it's one that we've talked about. If there's been any consideration to look into the stolen tags, the issue that we talked about, I think it's important to make sure that we're not sending citations to individuals that, have had their vehicle stolen. So has there been any thought about that and how we might be able to kind of proactively see if someone's vehicle or if the tag has been stolen in this bill?
So Delegate, I know that you mentioned 3 different matters to me when we met together. So I believe, Chrissy Nizer, Administrator at MBA, can answer that question for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor, and good afternoon, committee. For the record, my name is Chrissy Nizer, MBA Administrator. Yeah, thank you for the question. This issue's come up in the past. What happens when somebody has a stolen tag and reports it to us as stolen? We actually mark that in the vehicle. We made a change based on actually feedback from some legislators about their constituents getting citations. And so that information is actually not shared with the flagging jurisdictions anymore if we have it marked as stolen in our system. It is important that constituents know it's not just enough to go to law enforcement, but to provide us with that report as well. So then MBA records, it's marked because that's where the flagging jurisdictions come to get that information, but happy to follow up with you on that.
Sure. And I certainly appreciate that. But I think to your point, I think a lot of constituents may not know that they should be taking that step with the MVA. I think it would be helpful if we were proactively communicating with law enforcement. I also think it's a tool that, frankly, law enforcement might want to know that there's, a lot of stolen vehicles riding around a particular camera. I think it could be useful for law enforcement as well. So I would appreciate sort of that consideration inside of this legislation.
We'll work with you on some follow-up.
Thank you.
Delegate Foley from District 15.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor, for being here. It's great to see one of my constituents testifying in front of this committee. My question is, Madam Lieutenant Governor, you went over some statistics at the very beginning of your presentation. Could you go over those again for me, please? The numbers of accidents and citations. You had a list. Yeah, if you could go over that again.
Sure. And Delegate Foley, love to have you representing me in District 15. Essentially what we have right now on any given day, there are 300 construction zones and over 1,000 construction workers at these sites. In 2023, there were 1,200 crashes along work zones. So that's averaging over 3 a day.
Thank you. So we have 3 a day crashes essentially in work zones across the state of Maryland. And isn't it fair to say that if we could, we would have state police patrolling those areas to make sure that they were safer if we were able to do that? Isn't that fair to say?
It absolutely is, but do we have the resources to have state law enforcement officers at 300 different work zones? And sometimes work zones, they're not just a couple of 100 feet. They could be 6 miles long or 5 miles long, whatever it may be. So we would have to deploy law enforcement officers throughout the whole entire work zone activity as well.
Right. And so isn't it also fair to say that the use of these cameras as proposed in this bill would be to ensure the safety of those work zones without having to do that deployment so that our law enforcement could do other things and not to mention the fact that they couldn't cover all of the 1,200 work sites that were out there. Isn't that also fair to say?
It is absolutely fair to say, and I think it's also important to your point that we need to protect our law enforcement officers, because every single time that they pull a driver over for speeding or whatever it may be, they don't know what they're being exposed to in that situation. So if we can protect them more, the better we are serving the people of Maryland.
Thank you. And one last question, if I could, Mr. Chair. And if law enforcement, if police officers are deployed at work sites and they are patrolling and watching for excessive speeders in the work zones, how much would the fine be that they for the citation that they would issue if they were there in person?
Well, it varies. So first off, in Maryland, if there is a posted speed limit, let's just say 45 miles an hour on the roadway, a driver can exceed it by 12 miles an hour, and then the speed camera would be deployed in that case, right? So if they're 13 miles an hour or over, they'd get a ticket. But with a police officer, they can possibly even do it under that amount. So the fines vary from $290 to $1,000, depending on the amount of speed they're over the posted speed limit. In addition to that, they could also issue points for reckless driving.
So in other words, the fines here are very comparable to what the fines would be if the police officers were patrolling the work sites. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Lehman.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Madam Lieutenant Governor. Always good to see you.
Great to see you.
Thank you for bringing your team and for this bill. It's important, as we discussed. I thank you for the outreach, the one-on-one outreach. As we discussed, my one concern was around what happened for a number of years in the District of Columbia, where there would be posted work zones with these higher fines, and then the city would leave those signs in place, leave the designation long after the work had finished. And as I discussed with you, this creates frustration, cynicism. I know because I heard multiple stories about one spot in particular in the district, and I know because my daughter actually got a ticket in that area long after the construction had ceased. So my question is to State Highway, what will you do to ensure that those zones, those designations go away in a timely manner after the work is completed?
Sure. Thank you for your question. So we can write it into our business practices to ensure that we're continuously looking at that when they are active, when they are complete, and ensure that, as we said, we have 300 work zones on an average day. We have plenty of places where we would like to deploy cameras. So we have other locations. So I think it's just writing into our business practices, coordinating very closely with the people executing the work and our contractor to ensure that those are indeed active work zones.
And thank you very much for that. And quick follow-up, is there an appeal process if there is a mistake where an area continues to be designated as a construction zone when it is not anymore?
I will have to follow up with you on that. Other than the court system, I'm not entirely sure, but I will follow up with you on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'd appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I do not see any more questions to Lieutenant Governor or panel, so thank you very much for coming back to the House of Delegates. We have another panel from Lieutenant Governor. We'll bring up David Ryan from the Maryland State Police, Michael Sakata from MTBMA, and Howard Bostic from the State Highway Administration. And just a fair warning, we're going back to our timer system now that the second highest elected official in the state has left the table, so. Please proceed when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, members of the committee. My name is Howard Bostic. I am a Maryland State Highway Administrator. And I work at Maryland State Highway Administration, emergency response tech for CHAR. I am a member of the Driver Behavioral Subcommittee Work Group led by Administrator Nizer. I bring a unique perspective to the work zone group. My office are work zones, and emergency response techs respond directly to incidents that occur on our roadways, including assisting stranded motorists, providing traffic management, and supporting law enforcement and fire rescue departments on scene of crashes. I have firsthand the recklessness of distracted drivers' behavior, motorists when they are traveling through work zones. People continue to speed, don't move over, and it makes our job even more unsafe than it already are. Unfortunately, in December 2022, I was involved in a work zone crash on the JFX. We got called for a rollover vehicle, which is a crash where the vehicle rolled over. I got there, Baltimore City Fire was there. I activated my emergency lights, airboard, pushing them over to the left, had lane 3 blocked. Soon as I got finished putting all my stuff out, got out of the truck and went up to talk to the lieutenant. He said, watch out. Guy in my car hit my truck at 70 miles an hour. So unfortunately, if I was in there, I'd probably be retired right now because who knows what injuries I would have sustained.
Good afternoon. Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. I'm Lieutenant David Ryan, Commander of the Maryland State Police Traffic Incident Management Section. I've been a Maryland State Trooper for over 21 years and have served in various field command billets since 2013. I also served on the Lieutenant Governor's Work Zone Safety Committee. I'm pleased to be here to provide a law enforcement and safety perspective relative to House Bill 513. As the commander of the Traffic Incident Management Section, I often respond to and supervise collision scenes that occur within highway construction zones. Work zones provide a unique and challenging environment for law enforcement. Citizen safety, worker safety, as well as officer safety is paramount. As you know, many work zones are currently staffed with a state trooper to provide scene safety and visual deterrence. These troopers are specifically trained to work within these zones. Recently, the state highway has provided funding for an additional trooper to specifically provide enforcement in and around the work zone. Additionally, Colonel Roland Butler, Superintendent of the Maryland State Police, has tasked each barrack across the state to conduct regular work zone safety initiatives within their respective counties. In 2023, the Maryland State Police conducted 276 of these such initiatives, which provided 9,214 hours of enforcement, made 8,124 traffic stops, issued 11,489 citations and warnings, made 51 criminal arrests and 45 DUI arrests within the work zone. Additionally, 51 criminal arrests were made within these work zones. This work is and will continue throughout 2024 and beyond. Many of these collisions occurring in work zones are related to 3 factors: speeding, distracted driving, and impairment. Enforcement combined with education often leads to a reduction in violations and provides for a safer Maryland roadways. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Ms. Vice Chair, esteemed members of the committee. I'm Michael Sakata at the helm of Maryland Transportation Builders and Materials Association, championing the cause of over 20,000 workers who are the backbone of our state's transportation infrastructure. Today, I sit before you, not just as a representative of an association, but as a voice for those who risk their lives daily in Maryland's work zones. Our urgent plea is for the passage of House Bill 513, the Maryland Road Worker Protection Act, a beacon of hope for enhancing the safety of our dedicated workers. The tragic event on March 22nd served as a grim reminder of the perils faced by our workforce. It's a clarion call that we can no longer ignore. The workers are not mere statistics. They're fathers, mothers, sons, and daughters, some of whom are here with us today, whose lives are invaluable. Their safety is non-negotiable. The leadership of Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller in spearheading this bill is commendable. However, it's our collective responsibility to carry it across the finish line. House Bill 513 is more than legislation. It's a commitment to valuing human life above all else. It proposes stringent penalties for speeding in work zones and modernizing enforcement, directly addressing reckless driving that endangers our workers. The stark reality, as we have already heard, over 1,200 work zone crashes occurred in 2023 alone, happening amidst the 300 active work zones today. Each incident is a reminder of the urgency in which we must act. This legislation is our chance to make a definitive stand for the safety of those who build and maintain the roads we travel on every day. I also want to comment, this bill does not change the threshold that you're only considered speeding if you're going 12 miles over the posted speed limit. I implore you with the utmost sincerity and urgency to cast a favorable vote for House Bill 513 to change driver behavior. Let's honor the lives of road workers by ensuring the safety priority. Your support saved lives and sent a powerful message that Maryland values the safety and well-being of its workforce. Thank you for considering this life-saving legislation.
Thank you. And Mr. Bostic, we're glad you're okay. And I do just want to take a moment. I know the entire committee appreciates the families of so many victims being here and advocating to make a change and a difference. So thank you for being here. Are there any questions for this panel? I do not see any. So we will turn, if she's available, to Regina Ali, AAA Mid-Atlantic, who's a virtual witness in favor of the bill. Ms. Ali, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Can you hear me, sir?
We can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, yes, sir. Good afternoon. For the record, Regina Cooper Ali. I'm the Public and Government Affairs Manager for AAA here in Maryland, also representing Washington, D.C., and also a former Baltimore police officer. AAA is here in support of House Bill 513. We certainly recognize that automated enforcement, while not a panacea, is certainly an important traffic safety tool that can help not only keep our roadway workers safe, but certainly our police as well. AAA Mid-Atlantic has been supportive of Maryland's automated speed enforcement systems now for nearly 2 decades, working with the legislature in 2005 to first launch Maryland's pilot program for automated speed enforcement. And we've continued in 2009, working to expand that system to work in school zones. 2012, working with Baltimore City to address some of the issues with their automated enforcement systems, and then certainly honored to serve on the governor's work zone safety work group with the lieutenant governor and other traffic safety stakeholders last year and early this year. So we certainly recognize the dangers, and it should be important to note that work zones are inherently dangerous. We've certainly heard from other people, the gentleman who's worked in work zones. People are speeding through these work zones with little regard for public safety, little regard for the worker safety. And it's important to note also that while the workers are in danger, a lot of motorists, in fact, 80% of those killed in work zones are also drivers. So it's imperative that they slow down, not only in the interest and safety of our workers that are working so hard to expand our roadways and keep us safe, to protect our law enforcement officers as well. So AAA urges you on behalf of the nearly 1 million Maryland AAA members to urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you. We'll now call up another panel of in-person favorable witnesses. You might have to rotate seats a little bit. Marshall Brown, LECAT, Chad Fousen, American Council of Engineering Companies of Maryland, Stephen Noel, Dimensional Products, Michael Higgins, Concrete General, and John Becker, Safe Roads, Maryland. You folks are here. Please come on up. Don't touch the button, sir.
Nope. Sorry about that.
No problem. Please go ahead when you are ready. Hi, sir.
Sure. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Mike Higgins. I'm the General Manager of Concrete General, Inc. I'm here today to speak in favor of House Bill 513, the Maryland Road Workers Protection Act. We're a family-owned, Gaithersburg-based highway contractor working primarily for MDOT SHA and MDTA, building and maintaining our roads across the state here in Maryland. over 50 years in business and currently around 300 employees. Last year, on March 22nd, Concrete General lost 5 workers on I-695 from the crash. That changed our company, changed the victims' families forever. With me today is Kim Simmons, the widow of Stick Simmons and mother of MJ Simmons, 2 of those victims. Also here is Marissa Simmons. That was her father, Stick Simmons, and her brother, MJ. And Wanda Green, Stick Simmons's sister. Besides Stick, and I don't know if you would please stand up for me, Kim, Marissa, and Wanda, just to put an eye on, these are real people that were impacted on that day by that crash. So besides Stick and MJ, we lost Poncho and Carlos Escobar. They were 2 brothers that worked for our company. Chichi Ruiz, who worked for our company. And also Sybil DiMaggio, who was a KCI employee. She was the 6th victim that day. Over 100 years of construction experience was lost in a matter of seconds on a Wednesday afternoon around 1 p.m. by a driver who entered our work zone at over 100 miles an hour. We desperately need to see changes made in Maryland's work zones so this does not ever happen again. The construction work zone is the work office for our field folks. Every day, our workers are putting their lives on the line when they go to work on our roadways here in Maryland. We all need to do the best to help our workers go home each night to their families. The changes outlined in House Bill 513 are a step in the right direction. I ask that you do not forget what happened on March 22nd, 2023, and help make our office and work zones safer. Please vote favorably on House Bill 513, and thank you for your time today.
Thanks, Mike. You're welcome. Chairman Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is James DeRue, and I'm testifying on behalf of Chad Faison, Executive Director for the Maryland chapter of the American Council of Engineering Companies, in support of House Bill 513. I'm also an employee owner of KCI Technologies, a full-service engineering firm headquartered right here in Maryland. ACC Maryland is the business voice for our state's engineering industry. We represent nearly 90 firms employing more than 7,000 engineering and consulting professionals. Our members also play, in addition to engineering, play a critical role in ensuring that projects are built or constructed as intended by providing construction inspection personnel on our job sites, on your job sites. One such dedicated construction inspector was Sybil DiMaggio. With over 15 years of highway inspection experience, Sybil came to KCI to support the implementation of SHA's Transportation Systems Management and Operations Program. TSMO, for short, is a program designed to improve the safety, security, and reliability of our state's transportation network. Sybil was just 46 years old when her and 5 other roadway workers were killed tragically in a work zone along I-695. Let that sink in for a second. They were killed implementing a transportation safety project for the residents of the state. Hundreds of inspectors, just like Sybil, report to highway work zones every day in the hopes that their efforts will improve the conditions of our road systems. Aggressive and distracted driving, including excessive speeding, are unacceptable practices and endanger construction professionals. The provisions within HB 513 will allow the use of fully electronic speed control systems through work zones. While the state has identified several locations where these systems can be deployed, the program is currently limited by the number of systems in use on any given day. Multiple control systems and increased signage and speed penalties will provide the first important step in providing work zone safety within the driving public. It is our sincere hope that the state can find the resources to commit to a robust expansion of this program. Our workers' lives depend on it. Thank you.
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, esteemed members of the committee, I extend my gratitude for the opportunity to offer verbal testimony in support of HB 513, the Maryland Road Worker Protection Act. My name is Marshall Brown, and I serve as the Director of the Labor's Employers Cooperation, Education, and Trust in the Mid-Atlantic region. LESIT is a joint labor management association within the construction industry affiliated with the Labor's International Union of North America, or LIUNA for short. Our mission is to address worker issues with the welfare and safety of our workforce being top priority. Today, I stand before you in support of House Bill 513. This legislation is crucial for protecting our workers. High-speed work zones have taken a toll, as seen with the tragic loss of 6 lives on I-695 recently. House Bill 513 offers enhanced safety measures that can save lives and ensure that every worker returns home to their loved ones at the end of each shift. The measures include increased fines to deter speeding and reckless behavior, allowing the use of manned or unmanned speed control systems, issuing citations immediately for violations in work zones, and removing barriers to issuing citations during a 30-day warning period to ensure accountability from the start. Speed control systems make work zones safer by reducing accidents and saving lives, and from reducing accidents and saving lives, we need to pass House Bill 513 to improve safety for our workers. On behalf of Lessett, Lyuna, and our signatory contractors, I urge the committee to support House Bill 513. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Mark Corman and Vice Chairman Regina Boyce and the members of the Environmental Transportation Committee. My name is Steve Knoll. I'm with Dimensional Products. Dimensional Products was started in 2001. We are currently we have 4 members on our team. We are based in Finksburg, Maryland, and our territories include Maryland, Virginia, DC, and Delaware. We were started with the goal of developing a truck-mounted attenuator. If you don't know, a truck-mounted attenuator is what's mounted on the back of a truck to protect the vehicle, the workers, and the person who would strike that vehicle in a work zone. We've since come to work with other devices, including permanent applications. I'm here today to speak in favor of House Bill 513. As we are all too aware from the recent events on I-695, there is a need for increased safety measures in Maryland's work zones. Every day, our workers are exposed to impaired, distracted, and careless drivers. I believe we have a responsibility to help ensure these workers go home to their families at the end of the workday. HB 513 is a step in that right direction. With this passage, the funding can assist in the implementation of new technologies and increase the use of current devices that are available right now. These include work zone intrusion devices, queue backup detection, temporary rumble strips, movable access gates, and autonomous TMAs. Recently, while working on the Delaware Memorial Bridge, an impaired driver crossed 3 lanes of traffic and struck a temporary barrier wall where my associate and I had been sitting the night before. Luckily, that night, we were on the protected side of the wall and avoided injury. For me, there has been too many close calls, measured in feet and sometimes inches. In closing, I would like to thank Governor Moore and Lieutenant Governor Miller for their hard work and for the introduction of HB 513, a positive step towards helping to protect Maryland's work zone employees. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to advocate for those in the work zones today, and I close by asking you please vote favorably for HB 513.
Thank you all. I do not see any further questions for this panel. Appreciate you being here, and again, appreciate the families coming with you as well. We do have an in-person favorable with amendment piece of testimony from Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties.
Thank you to the chair. Thank you to the members of the committee for having me today. My name is Sarah Sample. I'm here on behalf of the Maryland Association of Counties, and we are here to support this bill with an amendment. We have hundreds of roadway workers and highway workers that work for local governments. And so what we're looking for here is really just to extend parallel authority for us to be able to protect our workers similarly to the authority that the state is receiving with this bill. And as you heard from the Lieutenant Governor, they're open to those amendments. And so we've been having those discussions with them. So we really appreciate that. And the only other thing I would add in terms of the reporting, I think this question was asked earlier to the state. When it comes to our speed cameras, particularly the ones in school zones, we do have to report pretty extensively on those when it comes to number of citations, how much money goes to the vendor, how much money comes back to us, number of people who work on those automated enforcement programs. So it's a pretty thorough report. I think it just got posted online. I can share that with anyone who would like to see it. But yes, we are favorable with amendment on this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for Mako? Okay, and I just want to make sure, did we get John Becker from Safe Roads, Maryland? John, why don't you come up now? Sorry about that. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Thank you very much. I'll be brief. John Becker with Safe Roads Maryland. We are a nonprofit working on making our roads here safer in Maryland. I'm here briefly going to talk generalities here. As far as the legislation before you, it is definitely about time that we did something for the people who are working on our roads, not only in repair, maintenance, but even new construction. And as this gentleman here behind me on my right, who responded to an incident, it even affects the people who are responding to an incident when something happens, an accident or whatever. It affects those staff people from the Maryland Department of Transportation. It also affects law enforcement, first responders, fire, ambulance, even the tow truck operator, even the cleanup crew has to go out there. So this is very important legislation to start on the road of making things safe in our state. And with that, I strongly recommend, because based upon our review of the legislation, there are increasing fees or penalties as things move forward or repeated offenses. We urge you all, please, please, please pass a favorable report on this bill and also contact your fellow legislators, both in the Senate and the House, so this bill passes and we all can live a little bit better. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing on HB 513. We will now turn to our colleague Delegate Lehman, HB 601, street racing and exhibition driving, prohibited acts, enforcement and penalties. If you have any kind of panel, feel free to bring them on up.
Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, we are going to begin with a video.
Eventually, they're going to kill somebody, whether it's themselves. I mean, we've seen it, right?
Hundreds of people gathering on the streets of Silver Spring as drivers do donuts and burnouts, and they do it in full view of the police. Stephanie Ramirez took questions to law enforcement today about what's being done to stop this. She's live now with more. Steph?
And Jim, I can tell you this incident happened where we are. This is Fenton and Ellsworth Drive, right in the heart of downtown Silver Spring, which also appears to be the hotspot for where these incidents keep happening, because we have seen them before. And if you look behind me, the crosswalk area, that looks to be some of the tire marks from the incident this past weekend. We have some of what happened. The X account, DMV Lives, shared video that quickly spread on social media of the incident. I'm told it was around 1 a.m. Saturday, and that Montgomery County Police didn't have the advanced intel that they normally have. So it ended up growing to a large crowd with only about 4 officers immediately on scene. In scenarios like this, police cannot chase, only work to disperse the crowd as quickly and safely as possible.
If it's dangerous, it shouldn't be done. And if it can be prevented, then I think it should be.
Do you think that police should be chasing these drivers?
And that's hard to say, because that too is dangerous.
I mean, especially when they're right there, they absolutely should be chasing them down, because we can't have that on our streets.
Now, Montgomery County Police 3rd District Commander Captain David McBain tells us they, of course, do post-investigations where police are looking at dash cam and area surveillance videos, but more complication comes in there because that is not enough. Police need to also identify the driver and place that driver at the incident in order to charge them with traffic violations, which he says are often just fines.
We're just trying to make sure nobody gets hurt and no property really gets damaged. So we have a lot of work to do if we're going to make a significant impact in these. I do believe that that lawmakers in Annapolis need to take a hard look at maybe sanctions or laws that can help law enforcement deal with this conduct by participating in these events. Because a lot of times, like I said, we identify them after the fact. And there's got to be ways for police to do investigations that can lead to some charges that have some stiff penalties.
So good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and colleagues. So it's fair to say that this video you just watched tells the story of a problem that literally has spun out of control in our state. The General Assembly has been grappling with this issue on how to deter speed and stunt driving contests more effectively for the last several years. For the record, I'm Delegate Mary Lehman, asking for your favorable consideration of House Bill 601. Street racing and exhibition driving prohibited acts, enforcement and penalties. It applies to contests on both public roads and in parking lots. Briefly, the 2024 bill does three main things. It mandates a court appearance for a driver cited for participating in a speed or exhibition driving contest. Currently, a driver can prepay fines. Worcester County has been able to reduce speed contests by requiring motorists to face a judge. You will be hearing from the mayor of Ocean City shortly about that. Secondly, the bill increases points against drivers convicted of violating this law. Drivers will get 8 points if there is no bodily injury in the contest and 12 points if the event causes bodily injury. This is the same penalty as someone would get for a DUI. And this is noteworthy because 8 points results in suspension of a license, 12 points results in revocation. And then finally, it authorizes a fine of up to $1,000 upon conviction for a contest with or without bodily injury. That would be an increase from $500. Absent more serious penalties, the fact is exhibition driving will continue to disrupt our communities, endanger law enforcement, and risk serious bodily harm or worse to participants and passersby. So I thank you for your consideration, and I'm asking again for a favorable report.
Just want to make, okay, it's working. So good afternoon. I'm Russ Hamill. I'm the immediate past president of the Maryland Chiefs Association. I'm here representing the Chiefs and the Sheriff's Association today. I'm also the chairman of the COG, Washington Metropolitan Area Council of Governments, Police Chiefs Committee, and their Safe Streets Task Force. So we extend our thanks to the sponsors for their efforts on this bill and listening Marylanders across our state about this concern. The Chiefs and Sheriff's Association support House Bill 601. This bill is intended to address community public safety concerns that frequently occur from street racing and exhibition driving, to which we responded across Maryland to 139 large events just in 2023. Across Maryland, there have been continual concerns regarding the safety of our roadways due to the reckless and careless driving engaged in by street racers and exhibition drivers. The actions of these drivers, who often conduct such activities with large groups of competitors and observers, often cause roadways to be closed to other traffic, including first responders responding to other incidents. And to provide care for others. They also cause others using our roadways, including pedestrians and bicyclists, to be placed in grave danger due to these actions. These actions include conducting speed contests on our roadways, closing roadways with vehicles in human chains, and conducting exhibition driving activities, all with a careless disregard for the safety and well-being of others. These activities have been ongoing across our state for several years and require legislation to properly address such activities and help preserve the safety and welfare of all, and achieve our goals of reducing traffic and pedestrian fatalities and injuries. Legislation passed a couple of years ago established special event zones in Ocean City, and these have been very effective. For this reason, the Chiefs and Sheriffs support House Bill 601 and urge a favorable report. I want to thank you for your time and consideration. I know you're very busy, but this is a serious drain on resources across the state and places all Marylanders in significant danger every time one of these events take place. Just recently, there was a homicide connected to one of these events. We really need your help in letting us serve the community better. So thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman. My name is John Seng. I chair and am the founder of Maryland Coalition for Roadway Safety. We sit here in full support of HB 601. What brings us to this afternoon's topic, this new evolving metastasizing, I use that term, form of big business criminal road behavior, exhibition stunt driving, and more. So, we've seen these videos. You've probably seen other videos just in preparing for this issue in this meeting, but I thought I'd walk you through an event that happened not quite a year ago, March 25th, 26th in 2023. And I'll try to hold this up. It's in the materials that we sent to the committee. But On the March 25th evening or to the early morning of Sunday, the 26th, an organized massive caravan plowed through Maryland, nighttime street takeovers, exhibition driving, blocked intersections, coursing all the way, practically bisecting the state of Maryland. Pedestrians struck by car, crowd members launching fireworks at the police, burnouts, multiple automobiles racing, stolen vehicles, stunt car crashes, you name it. The cost, as my colleague to the left on talked about, we believe reaches into the tens of millions of dollars across the state with 139 incidents reported. The thing that we really are concerned about is that, you have this organized crime element where we have been fixated on improving roadway safety down to the point of 0 deaths in Maryland. We hear that term a lot. So I appreciate the work in the past several years by Delegate Lehman, Delegate Love, Delegate Stewart, and other members of this committee to ensure that this bleeding edge of criminal roadway crime is put to a stop, and this legislation and your support of HB 601 goes a long way towards doing that. Thank you.
Great. Thank you. First question, Delegate Ruth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank the sponsor for this incredibly important legislation. This is an issue that has impacted my neighborhoods because some of these events, I live very close to Security Square Mall. Some of these events have come through my district or near my district. And it's definitely important to my constituents. So you talk about these as organized crime events. So these are people who are often coming from out of state. Is that correct? They're not just local people who decide to go out and get crazy one night.
So this isn't in our mindset. It used to be a couple kids meeting from a neighborhood and racing. This has turned into a very profitable business. Some of the purses recently have been reported to be $30,000 to $50,000 in cash. So you can imagine what that invites with it: cash, weapons, protect the cash, or to take the cash, relieve somebody of the cash. These groups are coming. We've identified groups from New Jersey, Virginia, Delaware, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and South Carolina, as well as Maryland, because that's a pretty large prize purse. So it invites that, it invites other criminal activity. What we forget sometimes is as they're leaving these events, they're having hit and run accidents. They're causing property damage by running over people's and businesses' property and causing further damage there. And then sometimes we do have the events of fights and other activities breaking out at these events. And as mentioned earlier, we have our first responders, police officers who respond to these. And these are large, hundreds of people events. And all they're trying to do is help keep the peace, keep people safe. Fireworks are being shot at the police officers in their vehicles. People are climbing on their vehicles, causing damage to the vehicles. This is a very large scale events. As I mentioned, 139 large ones across the state, hundreds of other smaller ones. And if we think the current laws being effective, we've got to remove that mindset. They wear the citations we write right now as a badge of honor. Yeah. They go on GoFundMe pages and ask people to pay for their tickets. We have one individual, I think they said it was 20-some tickets was relayed to me. He put out in front as a badge of honor that he earned these tickets doing these events. Then his GoFundMe page, he makes more money than much more money than what the tickets even cost. So it is a profitable criminal enterprise on top of everything else that we see. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. May I ask one more question? Thank you. So you mentioned that they're coming from New Jersey and other states. Are other states experiencing these types of events? And why, if not, or if so, why is there a difference?
Sometimes some of the other states have more robust laws, which Delegate Lehman's trying to get across the finish line here for us. And it's been a years-long effort. And not just because she's my delegate, but I really do appreciate it. It's, we had to create a task force, DC, Maryland, Virginia, through COG to be able to address this. One event, we had over 150 police officers out there, the resource training there. The other states have taken measures to address this, which is pushing, and it's not ending their events. I don't want to give any illusion that any legislation, it's going to take multiple tiers to address this properly, but it does push their people towards us. And we really when I mentioned over 150 police officers for one event in Prince George's County, that's 150 police officers who are coming in on overtime, those resources. And on top of that, the other officers that are working regular duty, they're not responding to the other calls for service and other necessary events that people are relying on us to help protect them. So thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
Delegate Morgan.
Mr. Chair, have you worked this out with Ocean City? I think you have, haven't you, for this bill? They're okay with it?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that, Delegate Morgan? I'm not sure of the question.
My question is, we had this issue last year and Ocean City had some objections. Is Ocean City okay with this bill now?
Well, you're going to hear from the mayor and the lobbyist for Ocean City. They are going to recommend a relatively minor amendment, but you're correct in remembering that Ocean City came to the legislature 4 years ago, Worcester County and Ocean City, because the problem was so out of control there.
Right.
And right now, Worcester County uniquely in the state of Maryland is able to make driving in one of these contests a must appear offense. And they will talk about other deterrents to this, but that is one of the main deterrents, is forcing participants to return in person and face a judge. That's obviously very inconvenient. That is not the law now. You can prepay the fine, but we have representatives of Ocean City to speak to.
So I'm guessing you'll be favorable to the amendment.
I have not seen it yet,
Okay.
but we will do everything we can. The Chair Corman has been very engaged in these conversations. I know he will continue to be, and
Thank you.
Thank you, though, for the question.
Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here. Quick question. Can you walk me through if this bill were to be enacted into law, how the enforcement of it would work? I mean, the Tacoma Park incident that recently happened, there were hundreds of people around, and the law enforcement that were in their cars, as you said, they were, being banged on, and it was really horrible. So how would they get through the crowd to the participants? And since they can't follow the participants, how are the participants going to be held responsible?
So it's going to take a robust effort by law enforcement across the region. We're going to have to work with our law enforcement partners. For me, being the chief of the Laurel Police Department, so I have to work with, we have 4 counties right there. So we have to work with our partners from those counties, from Maryland State Police, Transportation Authority. We have some methods that we've used that have been very successful in dealing with this, but it's a robust effort. Our hopes are, by us being able to apply the resources I've mentioned, including, so some of the video you saw there were air assets that were deployed by departments to be able to help us now. We're hoping by using these assets, using the collaboration between all these agencies, and once the new law comes into effect with the stiffer penalties, that you just can't pay your fine and go about your life, that you're going to have to come before a judge. And I imagine judges live in the communities like we all do. They're displeased with this as well. We're hopeful that that really dissuades this within the state of Maryland. I was the assistant chief and the acting chief of a larger county agency before I came to Laurel. Shows you how stupid I am. I did 36 years there, and that wasn't enough. I had to come to Laurel and keep being a police chief. But in those communities, by working together with those larger departments, agencies that aren't quite as large, are able to really be effective in how we address this. And I think by us working together this way, and then making sure, part of this is us educating the state's attorney's offices on the importance of this. Part of this is educating the bench on the importance of this. I really think I don't like the idea of displacing crime. That's where I was going. I don't want to just push it from my county to another county. I don't want to push it across the border into Virginia. Well, I want effective law enforcement, effective justice, so we can have this ability to just stop this nonsense, because people are getting hurt, people are getting killed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Chief Hamel, I remember that previous assignment. You were police commander in my police district in Bethesda. So thank you for your many years of service.
Thank you. And can I tell the other commanders you said the best one? Is that okay? I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
Commander Dom is doing a great job.
Yes.
Thanks for trying to put
Yes.
me in that position. Any further questions for this panel? Okay, thank you to the sponsor and your panelists. We'll do a round of the virtual if they're with us. Fazlul Kabir from the City of College Park, Regina Ali from AAA Mid-Atlantic, and Nancy Turner Smith. And please go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Corman and committee members. So my name is Fazlul Kabir. I'm the mayor of the City of College Park. I'm here to support House Bill 601, which would increase the penalties for any driver unlawfully engaging in racing and exhibition driving on public roads. And thank you, Delegate Lehman. Thank you so much for your hard work and for sponsoring this this bill. The College Park City Council voted unanimously during the meeting of February 6th, just 2 weeks ago, to support this bill. Unfortunately, our residents in College Park have experienced an increase in this dangerous and disturbing behavior. One incident required a significant coordinated police response in order to disperse the offenders without further endangering the public. It is not unusual for groups of motorcycle and ATV drivers to briefly take over sections of Baltimore Avenue or Route 1. Recently, a number of exhibition drivers used the sidewalks and circled a police vehicle at an intersection trying to protect law-abiding drivers. One of our College Park communities recently experienced such an incident during a street takeover just a few months ago in April last year at the intersection of Rhode Island Avenue and Edgewood Road. I actually live just 2 blocks from this intersection where this exhibition driving or the so-called the donut driving actually happened. And this happened late in the night, I believe at 2 o'clock in the night, and waking up hundreds of our residents and many of our police officers. And as a matter of fact, a police helicopter had to be called in and they responded to this event and they had to stay there for a while. These actions harm our communities and these actions waste the resources, especially the police resources. The House Bill 601 will penalize the behavior and reducing its happening and allow better use of our public safety resources. Thank you for the opportunity to speak and thank you for your consideration of this serious position. And I ask your favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Ms. Ali, please go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon again, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, Regina Ali, AAA Mid-Atlantic Public and Government Affairs Manager. AAA is in support of House Bill 601. We'd like to commend Delegate Lehman once again for her steadfast effort in trying to get this bill across the finish line. We know that speed kills, and police across the country and here in our region are continuing to see an increase in these rallies. As the other police official mentioned earlier, it's not just localized, I'm racing my friend down in a neighborhood. These are big events that are not only endangering our police officers, they're endangering our community. This past weekend, there was obviously a reckless, dangerous exhibition driving event in Tacoma Park, where the illegal activity basically shut down traffic on Ethan Allen and New Hampshire Avenue. So we're seeing this across our state, not just in any one particular area. I know last year in October, Baltimore County Police investigated numerous reports of illegal rallies in Woodlawn, Owings Mills, Halethorpe. And again, these activities not only disrupt traffic, they create chaos and they're dangerous. We also know in 2022, Maryland State Police investigated a multi-vehicle crash on Interstate 70, which was the result of illegal street racing. And tragically, in 2009, 2 people were killed and 2 more were seriously injured in Woodlawn as a result of an illegal street race on Interstate I-70. And in 2008, 8 people were killed in Prince George's County when the driver of a car that was participating in an illegal race crashed into a crowd of spectators. These events are continuing. They're only growing. They're only getting worse. AAA's Foundation for Traffic Safety found that even modestly higher speeds at the time of a crash dramatically increase the chances of severe injury and death. And these dangerous illegal street races are amplifying those risks. I know my time is up, so I will just finish by saying.
Thank you for your testimony. Nancy Turner, please go ahead.
Hello, and thank you for hearing me today. I'm very grateful to Delegate Lehman for her diligence pertaining to these unlawful car meets. After all you said and heard, I don't need to rehash how severe the problem is. What I want to say is, folks in our community, and no doubt countless others across Maryland, believe we've raised adequate outcry to see positive action on this issue. We're not naive enough to think that any law will stop reckless driving, speeding, or vehicle noise. But existing penalties fall short of dealing with unlawful gatherings that are held specifically for those purposes. We also know that provisions made for Ocean City have been productive, and we believe that all other Maryland jurisdictions and citizens deserve the same. We respectfully ask that you move forward with House Bill 601.
Thank you for that excellent testimony. Any questions for this panel? Okay, we will turn back to in-person favorable testimony. We have Michael Scheer from the Fraternal Order of Police, Stephanie Helsing from the Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce, John Becker from Safe Roads, Maryland, Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties. If any of these folks are here, you should come on up. I'll try again. Michael Scheer, Fraternal Order of Police, Stephanie Helsing, Greater Silver Spring Chamber of Commerce, John Becker, Safe Roads, Maryland, Sarah Sample, Maryland Association of Counties, and John Perkins, Vansville Heights Citizens Association. Sarah, you're on your own.
Thank you to the chair. Thank you to the members of the committee for having me today. Again, I'm Sarah Sample from the Maryland Association of Counties, and we are here in support of this bill. When I was first reaching out to the counties to get a sense of how big of an issue this was, the information I got back was quick and intense. This is something that is absolutely increasing across a number of our jurisdictions. So we certainly think that the penalties and the prohibitions will help deter some of this behavior. We particularly appreciate the authority that's been extended in Worcester, being extended to all the other jurisdictions when it comes to establishing these special event zones so that we can try and get ahead of this problem. So we appreciate that, and we are supporting this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Becker here again with Safe Roads, Maryland. I want to thank the chair, the vice chair, and you committee members here for allowing us to speak today. I'll be brief again in general. The key thing on this is it does affect people in all locations here throughout our state. Even in Rockville, where I'm from, I'm 2 blocks away from the city hall, 2 blocks away from the county seat, the various court buildings, and the police department. And there was an exhibition driving location in downtown Rockville. The bottom line of this thing also is that we please plead with you to go ahead and give a favorable report on this, because for those areas in certain parts of the states that have been suffering this for quite a while, it's time, and you've seen from the various testimonies and the questions of all of you, that this needs to come to an end. And I can assure you that this will probably be a multi-year process. But thank you very much for your time. And I please, again, contact your fellow delegates, senators, and please have this bill passed this year. Good luck.
Thank you. Any questions to this panel? Okay, we have some in-person favorable with minor amendment testimony from the Mayor of Ocean City, Mayor Meehan, and Bruce Bariano.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. For the record, Bruce Bariano. I'm here on behalf of the Mayor and City Council of Ocean City in very strong support of this legislation with a minor technical amendment. The amendment, I'll just mention that first kindly. If you turn to page 6 of the bill, all the discussions throughout the summer about this with Ocean City, with other people, was basically leave Ocean City's law alone, which this bill basically does. But on page 6, in lines 23 to 31, new language has been added, which is unnecessary. It's surplusage. And our amendment, which I'll give to your counsel if he does not have already, we would ask that that be deleted so that there is no new language to Ocean City's law. But we strongly support this. It's worked in Ocean City. We will be eternally grateful to this committee and your colleague committee and the entire legislature in the Senate and in the House, because it was 4 years ago that the bill that this committee passed and JPR passed that has enabled Ocean City to solve its problem by the law that's on the books. And we are very grateful for that. And we have worked and made ourselves available over the years to work with others to help statewide. Unfortunately, this has become a very severe statewide problem. And I have to say, and I say this with just out of gratitude and really respect to the chair of the committee. The chair of the committee interrupted his vacation in Ocean City to meet with the mayor and the city attorney of Ocean City to discuss this issue. And I just want to let you know how dedicated your chair is to this matter. And we really thank you for all your work and effort and caring. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, Co-Chair. My name's Rick Meehan. I'm the mayor of Ocean City. First, I want to reiterate what Bruce has said about thanking this committee for their support in the past, which really, I'm going to say, put it bluntly, saved the town of Ocean City. Going back almost 10 years ago, we were invaded by a pop-up rally event. By pop-up, I mean this is a social media generated event. Thousands upon thousands of cars came to Ocean City with the intent to disrupt and cause problems in our community. The results were unbelievable. It came to the point that I requested that 26,000 non-resident property owners and other visitors not come to Ocean City because it was not safe. When was the last time you ever heard the mayor of Ocean City tell people not to come to Ocean City? That's how bad it was. But with the cooperation of the legislature, we were able to enact our special event zone and subsequently some of these additional laws. And I just want to answer a couple of questions about the event that we were suffering through. 2018, we had 1,322 citations issued. 2019, 1,624. 2020, 1,498. In 2020, we had 123 arrests for reckless driving or demonstration driving. This is what happens when you pass the law. 2021, that was reduced to 56. 2022, that was reduced to 2. And 2023, that was reduced to 1. It worked. It drove that event out of Ocean City. Unfortunately, that event went to Wildwood. And that same event occurred and 2 people were killed, which was our greatest nightmare. And to answer your question, Madam Delegate, what they do in other states, the very next day, the mayor of Wildwood, New Jersey, and the subsequent surrounding municipalities called me to see what we had done to rectify that situation and asked us to forward a copy of the legislation that you all had passed so they could review it for their communities. This now affects the entire state. It's grown and continues and will continue to grow. I want to thank Delegate Lehman and the co-sponsors for this bill. It continues to protect Ocean City, but it's also going to make the state of Maryland safer. Because I can assure you, things will just get worse if action isn't taken. That's what we experienced in Ocean City.
Great.
With that in mind, I ask for a favorable recommendation with these minor amendments for House Bill 601.
Thank you,
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Are there any questions for this panel? Okay, thank you. We do
Thank you
have
very much, Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you,
one
members of the
additional virtual witness in favor, Danielle Singley, Westview Park Improvement and Civic Association, if she's available. Ms. Singley, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and community members. My name is Danielle Singley, and I'm the president of the Westview Park Improvement and Civic Association in Catonsville, Maryland. I reside in a community that consists of 1,800 households, and we are within a half-mile radius of several major thoroughfares that were actually talked about today, including Route 70, Route 40, Route 122, Interstate 695 and the I-70 and I-695 interchange. We also border Security Square Mall and Westview Shopping Center. In March 2023, our area was also inundated with these large groups of people who were drag racing in the middle of the night disrupting our way of life, disrupting our families, causing people to, have to call the police and so forth. We were every night for the entire month having to listen to loud music, cheering crowds, revving engines, spinning tires, screeching, wheels, just everything you can think of that comes along with it. It literally sounded like we were in the middle of a monster truck rally. I-70 is also inundated with street racing. Our community borders right up along I-70 as well. Again, same thing. It's really difficult. We call the police and most of the time they're outnumbered. I am completely in support of this bill. It couldn't come fast enough. I actually empathize with the Silver Spring community and the Ocean City community. We too have a video online of this event at Security Square Mall. It was horrible. It is a complete endangerment to our community. We are also very close to the Security Woodlawn exit crash that killed, 6 highway workers. My heart goes out to that family. I was right behind them. Had I been 5 minutes on time that day leaving my job, I too might have been involved with that crash. I also thank Delegate Lehman and of course my delegate, Delegate Ruth, and everyone else who votes in favor of this bill. It is much needed, especially for our community members who have to live with the trash, junk, and debris after all these events have ceased. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions for this witness? Okay, that concludes the bill hearing on HB 601. We'll now turn to HB 478, Delegate Sample Hughes, motor vehicle, school vehicle drivers, medical examinations. And if you have a panel, feel free to bring them on up.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman Corman and Vice Chairman. Good afternoon, committee. I'm Delegate Cherie Sample Hughes, representing District 37A. The bill before you today is entitled Motor Vehicle School Vehicle Drivers Medical Examination. If this bill sounds familiar to you, it would be in part because you heard it last year and you passed it last year. So today, I just want to acknowledge the fact that the bill was hung up in the Senate, and so that's why we didn't have a complete passage of the bill. Some of you are new to the committee and may not have heard this, but we have a shortage of bus drivers in the state of Maryland. I'm sure you've heard directly from your constituents, specifically Howard County, Anne Arundel County, and all over, I should say. I know for myself in Wycomico County, we certainly have that challenge as well. The reason for the bill is that currently with state law, it requires an annual certification to occur, examination to occur for school bus drivers. With that being said, the federal requirement is every 2 years. So this bill is to fall in line with the federal regulations and to be of the same mindset. We're looking at this from a couple of standpoints to address some of the barriers, to also address the shortage, but also to look at the mere fact that a lot of our counties, in particular, Wycomico, Garrett County, and there's a few others, but they border neighboring states, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Virginia. And we're finding that a lot of bus drivers are going over to other jurisdictions. The flexibility with this bill is not specifically saying that every jurisdiction has to go straight to every 2 years. If your jurisdiction, whether it be Montgomery County, chooses to continue with the annual requirement of medical examinations, then you have that choice. This is an opportunity to make some modifications. Over the years, what we also have found is that changes have occurred at the Maryland Vehicle Administration by their medical review board, which allows persons to submit complaints. It used not be that way. So what that means is if you are a parent and you suspect something going on with the bus driver and you want to acknowledge or submit a complaint, you have the ability to do so. And then that goes immediately to the Department of Transportation. They can address it immediately. The day that I did testify on this bill last year, it was like 2 days just right before that, something similar happened and the Director of Transportation was able to intervene. As a matter of fact, he ended up driving the bus himself. So we have some of these flexibilities and changes that have occurred over the years. So that's pretty much why I want to put this bill forward. to address several barriers that we have and some challenges. And you'll hear today from St. Mary's County's Director of Transportation as to what they're seeing with hands on the ground, or boots on the ground, I should say. If you look to your fiscal note, what you will see is in the local expenditures and small business effect, the local expenditures, your school boards will realize a small savings. Every little bit helps, but it certainly will, in fact, assist in the efforts to make sure that we have school bus drivers. And lastly, I just wanted to make you aware that the national physicians is now, a national certification is required now for physicians to be able to do the certifications. So you can't just go to your traditional primary doctor and say, hey, sign off on my CDLs. You have to go to one that is nationally certified, which in part is another barrier, especially in the rural communities. So with that being said, I will ask for a favorable report on House Bill 478. I thank you for your time, and I do have 2 witnesses.
All right, good afternoon, Chair Corman and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. I'm Jeff Thompson. I'm the Director of Transportation for St. Mary's County Public Schools, and I appreciate seeing everybody again. So as Delegate Sample Hughes stated, school bus drivers in Maryland currently have a requirement to get an annual CDL physical. Nationally, by regulations rules, a CDL driver can have a 2-year physical. And so today we're hoping for your support for House Bill 478 to allow school bus drivers in Maryland to be able to run under a 2-year physical if the county so chooses to go that path. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration has really evolved a lot of items with commercial driver's license in recent years. We have now, as the delegate stated, MVA now tracks all physicals by CDL holders. 10 years ago, that did not happen. So the counties had to do that when this original statute was created back in the 90s. You have the National Medical Registry of the doctors. That never was in place 10 years ago. So now those doctors are trained. They have to pass a test. They are much more stringent on CDL holders than what we ever were before. So we're seeing a lot of 3-month, 6-month, year certificates and not just a standard 2-year. And those medical examiners, we ran into this issue here with the year requirement because by federal law, they're not allowed or not supposed to give less than a 2-year physical without a valid medical reason. And there's been a lot of issues with that with the providers because they're like, well, MVA in Maryland wants a 1-year, but by federal, we're supposed to only give a 2-year unless there's a valid medical reason. And then we have this issue of the dates keep backing up because you have to have it within the time frame. So there's been a lot of challenges with those things. But I think with this change, I do not think there'll be any impact on student safety. I think you'll keep in mind that directors of transportation and general public have the ability to submit their concerns to the Maryland Medical Advisory Board. So I appreciate your time and I hope for a favorable review of House Bill 478.
Thank you. I think you want your virtual witness before we do questions, Delegate?
Yes, please. That'd be good.
Great. Can we bring up Desmond Hughes from the Wacomico County Board of Education? Mr. Hughes, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Desmond Hughes. I'm Director of Transportation with Wacomico County Public Schools. Appreciate the opportunity to speak on behalf of House Bill 478. Thank the delegate for bringing it back again before you again this year. As my colleagues and the delegates already mentioned, there have been several safeguards put in place over the course of the last few years, which then makes this piece of the law that Maryland currently has, which basically Maryland's about a handful of states that still require a special DOT physical other than what other commercial operators have, pretty draconian. So this would bring us more aligned to the federal regulations for as it relates to DOT physicals for commercial operators. Also provide us in the student transportation industry, certainly another tool in our toolbox for recruiting and retaining school bus drivers as they're desperately needed in the state and nationwide. So again, in order not to be redundant as to what already been said, we would ask for a favorable report from the committee as it went through the process last year and just basically ran out of time, but signed and died. But we would ask that you come bring it back before the general body in both chambers so that we can have this tool in our toolbox to continue transporting students safely in the state of Maryland. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir. And the first question for this panel is Delegate Stewart.
Mr. Chair, thank you, Delegate, for bringing the bill back. Thank you all. Good to see you all. I voted for this bill before. I think it passed, unanimously or something. I do have, it hits a little closer to home this year because my 5-year-old is going to start boarding a school bus this fall, which is exciting. So I looked into this a little bit more. My first question is, what do the medical examinations entail? Like, what does it cover?
Sure. So the regulations are listed under the United States Federal Code. And so they check eyesight, they have to check all your medications that you're taking to make sure those are all allowable to be driving with those things. They check hearing ability, they check a lot of physical components to you. So there's a lot of different aspects there. It's listed in the federal code.
Is a drug test included in the medical exam?
Drug testing is not
That's separate.
That's a separate requirement.
And is there like a mental health check or is it just physical, or is there a mental health check associated with those reviews as well?
Not necessarily part of the physical review.
So the medical examination doesn't include a mental?
I mean, they're going through different aspects of, the physical ability of the person, but not a mental, so to speak. I would say that's more the counties when they're doing their training. We do one-on-one training that they have to all complete, all the drivers. And so during that process, we're kind of making those assessments.
Got it. Well, that's interesting. Yeah, I saw that actually there was apparently like a 2014 study done that bus drivers, I think not just school bus drivers, but bus drivers generally were among the occupations that had the highest levels of depression and anxiety. So it's a little bit disconcerting that they're not testing that. I know that you all mentioned a little bit like competing for bus drivers in surrounding states. It looks like, I just looked it up. It looks like Virginia, Pennsylvania, and West Virginia all have the annual requirement. Are y'all aware of any other states that have this biennial requirement?
Mr. Hughes was going to respond to that one.
Okay.
Pretty much all of our neighboring states, Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Virginia, there was only, my last check, there were only about 4 to 6 states that required an annual physical for school bus drivers. The other remaining states were pretty much aligned with FMCSA. But I do know that Delaware, Pennsylvania, and Virginia, all of our neighboring states, is biannual.
Got it. Okay. Well, I think maybe I did some faulty research then. I did not look up Delaware, but it looks like I have West Virginia and Pennsylvania up here. It looks like they have an annual one, but at the same time, I could be.
What was your source?
Their website. Yeah, okay. The state code's website, but we'll figure it out. Thank you.
Okay. And with regards to the mental health piece, that seems like another bill. And I say that, and I'm not being sarcastic here, because this is a conversation that has come up amongst school bus drivers. I think not only from the mere fact that they are driving a bus with tons of kids behind them, and unfortunately it was noted in the committee that I'm on now, Judiciary, of times where families or children were on the bus and attacking other students, and the bus driver is expected to do all of these different things. But anyway, some of the bus drivers have indicated, certainly mental health could be a part of a process for them, but that has not been formalized and is not a requirement. So I think at some point, if that's an angle or area that needs to go, that would be another piece of legislation. But the conversation has taken place.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Thank you so much for bringing this back. Good to see you. I had 2 questions. One, this is enabling, right? So if a local jurisdiction wanted to move out to 2 years, they could. Correct?
Absolutely.
Okay. And then 2, and this may be, and if you don't have this now, that's no big deal, but I'm curious about the average age of bus drivers. Is that something you can guesstimate?
Yes, I don't know the number off my head, but what I will say is this. They're obviously of CDL law abiding, which is 21, and then it goes all the way up. Okay. What I have heard over the years is that they do not want to discriminate on the person's age, because that could be a discriminatory
Yeah, no,
factor.
I don't want to discriminate. I'm just curious about, when you talk about, retainment and recruitment, just, the average age of individuals.
Sure, but that was kind of where I was headed.
Oh, sorry.
Because we have bus drivers that are upward 70s, 80s years old, but if they're still passing those qualifications for the physicals, then they're still meeting those standards. So the average age, I would have to give that part of the question to both of the transportation directors as they're constantly hiring and rehiring people for retention. So either Mr. Hughes or Mr. Thompson.
Well, I mean, I think you answered the question. If you're saying that they are required to, and I don't know what the annual test for a CDL is, they're continuing to pass it regardless of age, then that is essentially, that doesn't matter, because you just have to pass the CDL if you're 21 and over.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, and the reason why I brought that up is because there was a bus driver in Dorchester County, 90 years old. You know, people want to say, oh, you're too old to drive, but if the individual is passing all of the requirements, then what are you doing? Age discrimination.
Fair enough.
There's actually a regulation that specifically stipulates we cannot use age as a factor for determining a bus driver with those things. But I would give you the averages are usually in the 50s and 60s is right around the average timeframe.
Great. I do not see any further questions, delegates. So thank you very much. That concludes the bill
Thank
hearing
you.
on HB 478. We'll now turn to HB 511. Vice Chair Boyce, vehicle laws, bicycles, operation at intersections. And feel free to bring up your panel.
That will surround you.
Oh, okay. We like that. That's good. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, I am Delegate Regina T. Boyce, presenting HB 511, Vehicle Laws, Bicycle Operation at Intersection. This bill previously was introduced in 2023 as HB 1289 by Speaker Pro Tem Stein, and it addresses a critical aspect of bicycle safety and traffic management. Now, HB 11 authorizes individuals operating bicycles to cautiously navigate stop signs at intersections on highways with 2 or fewer lanes for moving traffic. Specifically, cyclists would be permitted to make turns or proceed through intersections without a full stop, provided they reduce their speed to a reasonable rate and yield the right of way to certain vehicles under specified circumstances. 11 states and Washington, D.C., my birth city, Arkansas, Colorado, Delaware, Idaho, New York, North Dakota, Oklahoma, Oregon, Utah, Virginia, and Washington have implemented stop it as yield laws for cyclists. Notably, Delaware reported a 23% reduction in intersection crashes within 30 months following the enactment of similar legislation. From 2011 to 2020, fatalities of cyclists and other bicyclists and other cyclists surged by 38%, reaching 938 in 2020. A striking 26% of these fatalities occurred at intersections in 2020, emphasizing the perilous nature of intersections for bicyclists. The conventional requirement for cyclists to come to a complete stop at intersection discourages cycling and also poses risk of injury due to strains and collision hazards. Stop as yield laws empower cyclists to manage risk more effectively, enhance their visibility to drivers, and reduce exposure to potential accidents. Furthermore, bicyclists have a vested interest in yielding at intersections given their heightened vulnerability to injury in such scenarios. Maryland's commitment to complete streets and Vision Zero initiative underscores the state's dedication to mitigating injuries and fatalities on its roadways, particularly for vulnerable road users. In light of the alarming increases in traffic fatalities, witnesses in 2023 and the growing number of pedestrians and cyclists affected, HB 511 would serve as a crucial step towards enhancing road safety and aligning Maryland cyclist law with best practices observed nationwide. There are some vagueness in terms in the bill that do need to be addressed, and I'm happy to be here to address some of those terms that need to be better specified. And I know there are some opposition that are concerned that cyclists should, of course, follow the rule of the law as cars do, as well as I can't read my own handwriting. I'm so sorry. Essentially, it's just that we should follow the roads, and that considering there are now cyclists and cars on the road now, and some of our local jurisdictions are beginning to put in bike lanes, that we're just kind of accommodating one another on being on the road together, and therefore something like this legislation would not be beneficial at this time. I do hear those concerns, but I want to thank the committee for your time and your consideration and support of HB 511, and whoever would like to go first can go first. State your name. You have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, thank you for sponsoring this bill. Members of the committee, my name is John Corin. I'm with Bicycle Advocates for Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. We know that this is counterintuitive to drivers who don't also ride bikes on the road. And generally speaking, cyclists are required to obey nearly all of the laws that vehicles are required, but there are exceptions. So for example, there are times where a bicyclist is allowed to ride in the shoulder, is required to stay to the right, stay in a bike lane, and so forth. This is actually the safest practice. It doesn't mean blow through an intersection. It means roll up slowly, make sure you have clear sight lines in both directions. And if the intersection is clear and there's no oncoming traffic, that is the safest time for a cyclist to get across. And they will get across quicker and straighter without coming to a full stop. Cyclists need to slow to where they can put their foot down in case they need to make a full stop. For a lot of cyclists, coming to a full stop and then starting is a slow, wobbly time. And then you're longer in the intersection, which is the most vulnerable place to be. And finally, from a cognitive standpoint for drivers at an intersection are generally looking for other vehicles. A cyclist who is moving is cognitively more recognizable to a driver than a stationary cyclist. So it's also sort of easier for drivers to make sure that they're aware of cyclists approaching the intersection. National Highway Traffic Safety Agency put out a white paper on this, and you can imagine it's a high bar to get them to weigh in on something like this, but they did 2 years ago. That should be in your written testimony. We hope for a favorable view of this bill. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I am Seth Grimes with the Washington Area Bicyclist Association, which has over 1,200 Maryland members. Thank you for the opportunity to testify this afternoon. Delegate Boyce did a very thorough job of laying out the case for this particular legislation. I will repeat just some key statistics that the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration found that 54.5% of bicyclist injuries occur at intersections. Delegate Boyce cited a Delaware study that showed a 23% reduction in 2 different 30-month periods in the incidence of bicycle crashes at intersections. The data is there to support this bill. Delaware arguably is very similar to Maryland in its climate, its composition of cities and rural areas and suburban areas. I can speak as someone who rides to work in the District of Columbia, which enacted we call this a bicycle safety yield bill last year, that it is very encouraging to be able to ride through intersections without stopping for safety reasons. One piece of information that hasn't been brought up yet is that you have in your packets a letter of information from the Maryland Department of Transportation, which observes, and I saw Pilar Helm, who signed this letter just a couple of hours ago, although that was across the street. MDOT's top priority is safety. House Bill 511 encourages more people to bicycle by empowering vulnerable road users to make decisions to protect them from injury. The stop as yield measure is an attractive approach to improving safety because it provides a high safety benefit at no cost. There is no fiscal note to this bill for the state or for localities. So the Washington Area Bicyclist Association urges you to give a favorable committee reading on this bill and to enact it in the General Assembly. Thank you.
Okay, good afternoon, Chair Corman and members of the committee. My name is Menelik Yaha, and I am the Director of Education and Culture for Bike More, representing 5,000 active Baltimore City members and thousands more who rely on walking, biking, and riding in Baltimore City. We've submitted written testimony alongside many other organizations on the positive safety benefits of this proposed legislation shared by USDOT, National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, and neighboring jurisdictions that have implemented this policy, like Delaware. I want to use my time today to highlight the National Association of City Transportation officials' 2022 report, Breaking the Cycle, re-evaluating laws that prevent safe and inclusive biking. This paper builds on research from Charles Brown's report, Arrested Mobility, and included input from city experts across the country, including Baltimore City's Shared Mobility Coordinator. It highlights enforcement patterns that disproportionately impact people of color and recommends repealing laws that may have the intention to, but do not actually make streets safer for people walking and biking, and in many cases, inadvertently makes things more dangerous. A change in law to promote safety yields for bicycles is referenced as a main example in the report. It discusses the success of this legislation in other cities in improving safety and reducing the disparities in enforcement. In Baltimore City, we have the unfortunate history of laws with disparate impacts. If we can change this one and make everyone who bikes in Maryland safer while we do it, that seems like a win everyone should be able to get behind. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Good to see you all. One of the opposition raised the question, this applies only to stop signs and not stop lights, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, if I may. I noticed that in the bill, it talks about yielding to cars. Would you be amenable to adding pedestrians?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Excellent. And one more, if I may, sir? Thank you very much. I wanted to give you the opportunity to address the Horse Council's concern, and their concern that trailers carrying, or cars or trucks carrying or pulling trailers with horses in them take a lot longer to stop. And they're very concerned about how this piece of legislation would affect those drivers who are driving horses. Would you take a moment to address that, please?
Sure. Yeah, it is a yield. I would say it would be no different from a driver approaching an intersection with a yield sign, seeing an oncoming truck or something large that takes longer to stop, and taking that into full consideration and determining, am I going through, am I properly yielding or not? You've got to take context and how far away they are, what size it is. So it's a full-on yield. It's no different than a car approaching a yield sign. Does that help?
If I may add a point, which is that I have never seen a horse trailer in my suburban neighborhood. And the area where this bill would have most effect is not one where you're going to see horse trailers.
Okay, I mean, there's lots of areas of Potomac where people ride bikes and have horse trailers, so.
Yeah.
Delegate Foley from Potomac.
Sorry.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, I think. So I'm glad Delegate Love asked the question about pedestrians, which I think it is important to put in here that if there is a pedestrian in the intersection, that the bicyclist must stop. That's what I'd like to see in the bill. So thank you for that. My question, though, is about electric bikes. Does this also apply to electric bikes? I am concerned about electric bikes because I think they're very close to the edge of being mopeds. And I have seen people injured badly with electric bikes because of, they're not as controllable, I don't think, as manual bikes, I'll call them. And so I just wondered what you envision here for electric bikes. Would they be getting the same, be able to do the yield through the stop signs like regular bikes?
I think the definition of bike includes an e-bike, so we can talk more about it, but
Yeah, that's correct. Statutory definition of bicycle does include e-bicycles. And while they can go faster, that, there are different classes of e-bikes, some with pedal assist only, some with throttle. Pedal assist class 1, for example, the pedal assist stops at 20 miles an hour. But they are designed to be able to stop to deal with, speed and weight of bicycle and so forth.
Right, but my only point is if it's an electric bike, forget the pedal assist for a second. If it's an electric bike, I mean, it could be going a lot faster. My neighbor has one that goes, 35 or something. Not that she does it that fast, but she does. It can go up to 35. So if you're going 35 and you throttle back, then you're going 25. That's a lot different than a bicyclist on a manual bike, slowing down. So
I think the key,
point.
I think the key thing there is the vulnerability of the user. The vulnerability of the rider is no different, whether it's a bicycle or an e-bike. And somebody who goes too fast through and is not a full-on yield is not adhering to this law.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you just answered one of my questions, and that was, so the difference between this law and what's currently in effect is that a bike can yield at a stop sign and they don't have to stop.
Yes, under current Maryland law, a cyclist would have to make a full-on stop, which means foot down, and then look both ways and proceed. And again, the danger there is that for many cyclists, they're slower starting, they're a little wobbly when they're starting, and therefore they're in the intersection longer, which puts them at risk for a longer period of time. If they have clear sight lines and slow, but are still rolling, they can proceed through on a straighter line and at a little bit more speed, and and therefore get through at the safest time, which is while it's clear.
Okay, I come from one of those jurisdictions where there may be a horse trailer coming by. And I also come from a jurisdiction where we have bike trails that cross 2-lane highways that are 50 miles an hour. I mean, are there any provisions in the bill for fast highways or speed limits?
That's a different situation.
I don't think the bill has any speed limit. I think it only has the 2-lane limitation.
Okay, and lastly, if I may, Mr. Chair, does this change the right-of-way laws?
I wouldn't think so. Again, for the cyclists, it would be as if there were a yield sign there, and so I don't think so, but I
think it does. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Madam Vice Chair, for bringing this bill. I like this bill. And I understand where everyone's coming from the safety standpoint. Forgive my ignorance as a non-bicyclist myself. I'm just trying to get at the point that was made about the enforcement piece. I definitely do not doubt that certain communities are treated disproportionately, treated differently by police. I'm just curious, just again, as experienced bicyclist yourself, how often are you pulled over or ticketed, or like is that
Next to
Is the enforcement piece?
next to none.
Okay.
I mean, I've never been pulled over on my bike. I obey the law as well, but.
Of course. I was just more curious.
Yeah.
I was more curious if the focus here is safety versus the.
It's about
enforcement piece.
safety, more often than not. I think just recently, I was talking to the executive director of Bike More and someone was hit and killed, an older African-American gentleman on a main thoroughfare in Baltimore City. And so it's probably due to some of those incidents of not being able to kind of yield in versus full stop and then being essentially trapped and then hit. So.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay, I do not see any further questions for the sponsor of the panel, so thank you. We have a virtual unfavorable witness, Kimberly Egan from the Maryland Horse Council. Please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Kim Egan. I'm the president of the Maryland Horse Council. We very much appreciate Delegate Boyce's introductory remarks that she is aware that there are some vagueness issues that need to be addressed, and I'll talk about that in 1 minute. But I do want to correct some apparent factual misunderstanding among some on this panel about the horse industry in Maryland. It is not the case that this would apply to areas where there are unlikely to be trailers. This bill would apply precisely to the areas that there are many, many horse trailers. The Maryland horse industry is a $3 billion industry, $2 billion, a $3 billion industry, and we have more horses per square mile than any other state in the country. And we have the most dense horse population in the metropolitan areas of the East Coast than any other state. There are horse trailer bicyclist interaction on 2-lane roads every day, multiple times a day. It is also not correct that pulling a horse trailer is no different than pulling a truck. The momentum of live weight is very different than the momentum of static freight. So that's an important consideration. It is also the case that 2-lane roads in the rural parts of Maryland are often tagged as a 50-mile-an-hour road. So most of the state roads that are 2-lane roads out here in the rural areas are 50-mile-an-hour roads. So this would not be slow-moving traffic. I wanted to make sure everybody understood that. These roads are also narrow roads with no shoulders. They are mainly double yellow lined roads. And most importantly, the sight lines are already extremely short. If you're driving a truck that you can't slow down as quickly as another truck, and there are no sight lines, and the bicyclist literally cannot see oncoming traffic to know whether or not, that's an unsafe situation for no discernible public safety purpose that we can identify. Thank you.
Any questions for this witness? Okay, thank you very much. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 511. We'll now turn to HB 552. Delegate Madam Vice Chair, you're still there.
I'm still there.
Yeah.
Can I get my other folder?
Of
I
course.
thought there was someone between us. Sorry.
Vehicle laws, automated enforcement citations and notices.
Thank you so much and good afternoon again, Chair Corman and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. For the record, I am Regina T. Boyce, representing HB 552 Vehicle Laws, Automated Enforcement Citation and Notices, Mailing Addresses. This is a straightforward and common sense bill that is intended to save our constituents time and money. It is also a departmental bill. HB 552 requires that jurisdictions use the current mailing address on file with the Maryland Motor Vehicle Administration to send citations and notices issued as a result of an automated enforcement. Additionally, if a mailing address is not available, the jurisdiction will also be required to use the current residential address on file with MVA. Many constituents have complained about unpaid traffic citations that they did not know about, which then led to an administrative flag with the MVA as a result of non-payment for the citation. Those customers may not have an initial opportunity to pay their citations and first learn about the citation after receiving a notification from the MVA that an administrative flag was placed on their account. The current process is causing undue burden on many of our constituents and should be updated to be more efficient by requiring jurisdictions cross-reference addresses with the Motor Vehicle Administration, which holds the most updated customer information. The department hopes to eliminate unnecessary fees and subsequent administrative flags. For those reasons, I respectfully request a favorable report on House Bill 552, and I turn it over now to our MVA Administrator.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee, and I'd like to thank Vice Chair Boyce for introducing the bill. It is really a simple requirement, as she said, to ensure that if we do have a mailing address, that is where the flagging notice goes. We all work hard to ensure that customers are properly notified and have the ability to take care of these type of issues. And in most cases, that residential address is where somebody gets mail. But there are many instances, and you probably are aware from your constituents, somebody has a PO box. There are addresses in Maryland that cannot get mail delivered to that physical location. Military members who have a different mailing address, and other reasons that customers might not get mail at that residential address. We've worked hard with our system modernization to make sure we offer options to ensure that customers are getting timely notification. And that's why we make sure to capture that mailing address. As Vice Chair Boyce said, it really is a burden on the customer because when we notify them, that might be the first time they're aware of it. They then have to go back to the local jurisdiction or the flagging jurisdiction. And that jurisdiction has to determine whether or not they will send a flagged in error. Otherwise, they have to pay that $30 fee to us currently. And that's why we think it's really the best policy to use that mailing address if a customer has a mailing address. We all want to make sure that customers have appropriate notice and that they are able to resolve these issues timely. And at the end of the day, it really reduces that friction in the current system to improve customer service at the MVA. For these reasons, we'd respectfully ask your favorable consideration and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you both. Are there any questions? No one would dare. Okay, thank you both very much. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 552. Turn to Delegate Allen, HB 514, commercial law, statutory liens, motor vehicles towed or removed from parking lots.
Mr. Chair, may I bring up my panel as well? All right, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, fellow members of the best committee in the General Assembly. For the record, my name is Delegate Nick Allen. I'm here to testify in support of my bill, House Bill 514, which deals with statutory liens on motor vehicles towed or removed from parking lots. I know we hear a lot of bills around here, and often the sponsors say they're really simple bills, but for once, I think this is the case. This is a pretty simple bill. So what we're doing here is we're codifying into law statewide what is already longstanding industry practice and what is already in some municipal and county codes in Maryland, including Prince George's County, that the owner of a lawfully towed vehicle, and the key word there is lawfully, from a private parking lot must pay certain towing related charges before reclaiming the vehicle. The language of this bill is modeled again after the Prince George's County Code portion, and it establishes a possessory lien on the vehicle that is extinguished when those towing charges are paid to the tower. The goal here, beyond putting into law, was already industry practice, like I said, is to protect the towers, many of which are small family-owned businesses, from lawsuits that could very well bankrupt their business. I'm aware that predatory towing is always a concern here. It's a concern of mine as well. All towers in Maryland must still abide by the strict signage and notification requirements as established in the transportation article. This bill does nothing to change those requirements. These requirements, just as a refresher, include signs that are 24 inches high and at least 30 inches wide, One sign must be present for every 7,500 square feet of space in the parking lot. Signs must be clearly visible to the driver, including at the entrance to the lot and multiple entrances, if there are multiple entrances. The location to which the vehicle will be towed and the name of the towing company must be displayed. The maximum amount the tower of a vehicle, or the owner of a vehicle, excuse me, may be charged. The vehicle is must be available for reclamation 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And then the contact information for the towing company, including the phone number, must also be displayed. So again, to be clear, whether we think these requirements are too strict or not strict enough to protect against predatory towing, they all remain in place regardless of what happens with House Bill 514. I'm also aware of some of the concerns that have been raised by some in opposition to this bill, as I'm sure you all are glancing at in your floor system, especially due to there's pending litigation somewhat related to this. I have been in contact with the Attorney General's Office of Consumer Protection. I'm more than willing to work with them. We've had a good conversation even as recently as this morning. I've also spoken with our good friend, my friend and yours, Mr. Bob Enton of the bankers, and we're working together on possible amendments with him as well. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to the rest of my panel. I look forward to answering your questions, and I respectfully ask the committee for a favorable report, and thank you all for your time.
And thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I want to start with a quote from the Court of Special Appeals, and you'll see why it's important in a second. They said, as we see it, the obligation to pay arises because a vehicle owner who parks in an area where signs prohibit the parking of unauthorized vehicles, and such signs indicate that the vehicle will be towed at the expense of the vehicle's owner, impliedly agrees to reasonable towing and storage charges. Why that's important is because in this law that we're trying to create, they were actually quoting an attorney general's opinion on this. So it was sad to see the attorney general then weigh in with concern when it was their opinion that guided a court in 1990 to get to this point. And what the court was getting to was you have an implied duty to pay, and how that payment would then occur is through the possessory nature of the tower having your car and you paying to get it back. That consent, in my opinion, and the court's opinion, they had to stop short because it was not preserved for appeal, but they stopped short of holding that. But I think they would have, because consent is the hallmark of any lien. And this is a possessory lien. I think we're getting a little ahead of our skis thinking the lien may be some other reason they want to have ownership or anything else. The simple fact of the matter is the tower who performed a service for a private property owner is asking for that service to be compensated. We understand the opposition with regard to the retroactivity piece in this, and we certainly are willing to abandon things like that if it gets this sensible piece of legislation through that all towers practice. I can tell you in Baltimore City, where I reside, that if I get impounded by Baltimore City, I have to pay to get my car out. And I'm sure that's the case for every municipality and county in this state. It's just the practice of the industry. Unfortunately, this gap in the law, and I say that's a gap in the law because if you look at the transportation article, and it's 2110A05, it talks about how the owner of the car needs access to the vehicle for personal things inside or just to inspect it. They wouldn't need access if they could simply take the vehicle. You envisioned this in 1989. I'm asking you to just codify it here today.
Thanks. And for all your fans at home, can you identify yourself and who you're representing?
Yes, I'm sorry. Thomas Thompson on behalf of Henry Record Service. Thank you.
Great. Questions for the sponsor, Delegate Davis.
As I was wondering what the issue was, and now it just, light bulb just went on. What other industry, what other debt collectors gets an automatic possessory lien over your vehicle and everything in it? I didn't need to answer.
Yeah, so, and it's interesting. So we see this throughout the various counties that do allow, they have statutorily provided this to towers, but not all counties have done it. We're asking the state to do it. And what's interesting is an unscrupulous tower can simply put this on their sign and there's an argument that they have this power. We are at least having the courtesy to come to the legislature and say, hey, we think you missed something. Can you put this back in? To your point and question, if I were to take my car to a mechanic, we've all heard of mechanic's lien, where if I don't pay for the car, the mechanic then goes through a process to attach that lien, right? And that's explicit consent. We had an explicit relationship with each other. Unfortunately, in this case, the tower's relationship is with the private property owner who owns the parking lot where the vehicle needs to be towed. And that's why that quote I was telling you about implied consent to pay, which the court has found exists. It exists because the person just simply eschewed the law, looked at the sign and said, you know what, I'm going to park here anyway. I'm going to violate this person's private property rights. And then the tower is not allowed under law to ask the owner for remuneration. They have to ask the person whose car was towed because that's the service. And that's why we're here today, because what's going on is towers hold the car and people, when they pay their money, they get their car back. These lawsuits that you're seeing, it's very interesting. They're never about spotting all the terrible things that we hear with towers lifting cars and triple, doubling the fees. It's not about that. It basically says you did a lawful tow completely. It's that you asked for remuneration before returning the car. I think that case eventually will fail in summary judgment, and that's why we're not too concerned about the retroactivity of this piece. But that's how it works. And to your further point, we're not even asking, and that's what we're working on the bankers. We don't want to be first in line. We don't want to have priority lien. We don't want to have any of that. If they want to get that, there's a mechanism in law that gives you notice to the car owner, to the collateral parties, to everything. And then you can go through that more lean process. We're just asking for the physical holding of the vehicle.
Okay.
Delegate Stein. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about the process of attaching liens in other situations, like you mentioned, a mechanics lien or situation where there's a dispute between a contractor and, say, the owner of a property, or subcontractor and the general contractor. When someone who's owed money because the service has been lawfully provided but hasn't been paid, when they can seek a lien on the other party's property, is it automatic or do they have to go to court?
There is it's codified. It is actually codified. It's kind of buried in the middle of the mechanics lien portion. There's an airplane portion and then there's a mechanics lien portion. No, it's not automatic. And it's not automatic to perfect it either. Again, this is meant to be a possessory lien. I certainly think the title calls it a statutory lien because we're creating it in statute, but this is simply a possessory lien until you can simply extinguish it no matter where you are in the order by paying that lien, the reasonable tow fees, which are set by local, state and local law.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Terrassa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And can you just go back for a second? And you probably said this, but maybe I just don't understand. Why is this necessary? What is it that they can't do now that they could with this?
Well, the argument is they can do this now. The issue is there appears to be a gap in the law, which is your transportation article, which is at 2110A. If you look in 2110A, this isn't expressly in there. However, it's part of industry practice, and that industry practice was actually recognized by the Attorney General's office. It's cleaner to basically do it this way as to simply tell somebody, well, just throw it on your sign and go ahead and do it. The tow industry, and at least my client, wants to say, hey, legislature, this has been around a while, and now we're getting sued because it says we can't hold the vehicle. We've done everything else you've asked us to do under law, with licensing, with capping of fees, how people can pay, the access to the lot, all that stuff has been complied with. And yet the only thing that gives them any leverage of payment is the holding of the car. That's now being attacked in court. And that was not your intent. It was never your intent, because when you read the transportation article, you can see that there was supposed to be, and in the preamble of the 1989 bill, continuous access to the vehicle. You wouldn't need that access if you could simply take the vehicle. You would have unfettered access. So there shows that there is a gap in logical thinking that just got missed in drafting. That's all.
So, and you were saying about, like, if you bring your car to the mechanic, they
Yes.
have an automatic lien?
No, if you ask for them to change your tires and then you come back and you say, I'm not paying you for the tires, I'm taking the car. That's where the mechanic lien trigger. That's where that would get triggered. And there is a process under state law that would allow that. That's a weightier lien, because that's a kind of like you have a verbal contract with each other. We have a third party injected into the process. Unfortunately, we have the consent with the owner, and then we have implied consent from looking at the signs and not adhering to them. So that's a kind of where the rub is here.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you saw the letter from the Office of Consumer Protection in Howard County.
I have not
coming-
seen that. No, I've not.
Okay.
I saw it, yes.
Okay, I just wanted to ask if you could respond to that, to a case of an unlicensed tow company or one that has been specifically denied access and
Yeah,
just does it anyway?
I saw that. I had not heard about that until I read that letter. I mean, that sounds absolutely horrible and a horrible position for anyone to be in. I think the key here, and I mentioned this in my testimony, the key is this for a lawful tow, right? So if a towing company is towing people from a parking lot that they do not have the right by the owner of that parking lot to tow from, that's not a lawful tow.
And Delegate, there's also penalties both in state law and in Howard County's law, local law, that should be able to address this, and they should pursue that. I think any tower that would testify today would say that person should not be towing vehicles, period.
Delegate Love.
Mr. Chair, you've mentioned several times an Attorney General opinion. Could you provide that to
I
the committee,
can.
please?
I have it's hard
Just
to.
provide it to committee. That's fine.
Oh, sure. I can
Thank
do
you.
that. Absolutely.
Okay, any further questions for the sponsors panelists? Okay, we do have a number of other favorable witnesses. I'm not sure how many of them are here. Grayson Wiggins for HWS, Paul Ellington, State and Local Advisors, Andrea Mansfield, Towing and Recovering Professionals of Maryland. Please just go ahead.
Hi. Hi, Dan McHugh on behalf of State Local Advisors for Paul Ellington. Yeah, we're in favorable of this bill. We are representing Silver Spring Towing, which is based in Beltsville. They've been doing, towing for over 30 years in the DC, Baltimore area. This bill is a good bill that cleans up these towing laws in the state. It's not uniform. It's good to see that Prince George's County took action, that they have a pretty solid, there isn't disputes, and because you have signs at the apartment complexes or the townhouse complex, it clearly says if you park here unlawfully or unauthorized, you can be towed, and this is how much it will cost, and this is who you call, to get your car back if it is towed. I've been to townhouse communities for Super Bowl parties in the past where, you're looking around, you're going, did they tow here or not? And you're looking for a sign somewhere and you don't see one. And you're like, and I asked my buddy, I'm like, hey, do they tow in your neighborhood? And he goes, I don't know. So then, at 11 o'clock at night after the Super Bowl, you find out your car gets towed. You're not going to be too happy and you have no idea who to call to even get it back or how much it's going to cost you. So yes, there should be signs, and that protects not only the motorists, but it also protects the towing companies that they can't be sued because they say, hey, these signs were in the community. It clearly said you couldn't park here unauthorized unless you had a permit or whatever. So this is a good bill. And I want to thank the delegates for sponsoring it. I want to thank Delegate Corman and Delegate Boyce, and thank you, and favorable for the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Andrea Mansfield, Andis Canning and Associates representing the Towing and Recovery Professionals Association. I want to say and thank Delegate Allen, but I don't know, I think he's trying to give you some competition there, Delegate Foley, I don't know, with representing the towing issues. But really, I'm just here really to weigh in for the association's support. They've been involved in these issues for many years. I know this was something that was discussed, I think it may have been back in 2012, the last time there was the larger tower legislation out there. I do feel that we're aware of the AG opinion, but I think this would make things much more clear for them in terms of their operations, and would just urge a favorable report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, we have a favorable amendment in-person testimony from Johnny Oshevsky Sr. Please go ahead, sir.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, Chairman Corman, Vice Chairwoman Boyce, and committee members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name's John Oshevsky Sr. I'm with OK Strategies, and I represent the Baltimore County Towers Association. We support House Bill 0514 amended. We'd like to see a bill amended to include police-initiated tows. To give you some examples of police-initiated tows, they could be inoperable vehicles, abandoned vehicles, vehicles that are involved in accidents. These vehicles are eyesores to the community, sometimes strewn across local roads, or in the case of accidents, they shut down roads until the vehicle or vehicles are towed and the road is clear of debris. This legislation, if amended, would allow the towers to hold the lawful, legal, police-initiated tow vehicle until the bill was paid for the services provided. It's an unwritten rule that this is in the process now. This amended legislation would codify that process. Now, as we know, local police, transportation authority, and state police, they depend on the towing industry to do all these things. And I just wanted to use a quick analogy. If you went to a grocery store and you needed food, you fill your cart, you can't go up to the cashier and say, I'm going to pay you later. If you have a lawful legal tow from police departments, you can't go to the tower and say, hey, I want to get my car and I don't want to pay for the services you provided. So I would hope that this committee would look favorable with amendment on this legislation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions y'all may have.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay, thank you again.
Okay, thank you very much.
We have a piece of unfavorable in-person testimony. Robert Denton, Maryland Bankers Association.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Robert Etton on behalf of the Maryland Bankers Association. Did have a conversation with Delegate Allen this morning. I've had a number of conversations with Mr. Thompson's colleague, Grayson Wiggins, about this legislation. What concerned the banking industry was that the way the bill would work as introduced, if the tower didn't get paid under this bill for the first time, the tower could sell the vehicle. And from the proceeds of sale, unlike a mortgage or anything else, those proceeds of sale for the secured party, in this case, with a mortgage, it's the mortgage holder. In this case, it's the car loan company, whether it's a bank or GMAC or whoever, they have a lien on the car. And that lien is a matter of public record, yet the tower would get paid prior to the secure party being paid. So I think the sponsor and the proponents are totally amenable to amending the bill to say that under this lien, the secure party, whoever it is, gets paid first. And with that, that would address the objections that we have with the bill. Thank you. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? I do not see any, so thank you very much. And
thank you.
That concludes the bill hearing on HB 514. We'll now turn to HB 605. Delegate Stein, motor vehicles, recreational vehicle dealer agreements, and please feel free to bring up your panel.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and committee members. This bill deals with the regulatory framework for the recreational vehicle or RV industry. We passed very similar legislation last year, but our concurrence with the Senate amendment did not make it in time on sine die. So we're back here again. RV dealer and manufacturer agreements are governed by the same regulatory framework that governs auto dealers and their manufacturers, but the RV industry is very different. RV retailers are not franchises of a specific manufacturer. For example, a car dealership, Honda or Ford dealership sells only Hondas or Fords, but in the case of the RV industry, a single RV dealership can sell RVs from multiple manufacturers. So the current regulatory framework for RVs that is the same as for car dealers and manufacturers doesn't work. So this bill establishes a new framework that would apply to RV manufacturers, distributors, and dealers. It also establishes new procedures to govern dealer agreements, warranties, and other matters affecting the relationship between manufacturers and dealers. The bill is based on a nationally negotiated RV-specific model law that the National RV Manufacturers and the National RV Dealers Associations agreed upon 3 years ago. And similar RV-specific laws have been enacted in 18 other states, including Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Virginia. So for all these reasons, Mr. Chair, I urge a favorable report.
Chair Corman, Vice Chair Royce, and the members of this committee. I'm Sophia Della Torre, the Senior Manager of Government Affairs at the RV Industry Association. I thank you for the opportunity to appear here before you in support of HB 605, the bipartisan bicameral legislation to govern the relationship between manufacturers and dealers of recreational vehicles. This legislation was approved unanimously by the committee last year. The RV Industry Association is a national trade association for manufacturers and their component part suppliers. Together, we make up more than 98% of the industry. RV industry operates on a one dealer to many manufacturers model with no true franchise relationship, unlike the auto industry, which is one dealer to one manufacturer in a true franchise model. The current law creates confusion, and there's provisions under which applies to which industry. To fix this problem, the RV industry is asking the committee support HB 605 and place the manufacturer-dealer relationship in RVs in a separate chapter of the law. The RV Industry Association and RV dealers in Maryland both strongly support its approval. Consumers will benefit from this better relationship between RV manufacturers and dealers, since the legislation will improve cooperations between warranty matters, pre-delivery inspections, and other issues. Consumers will also benefit from a more stable environment, knowing the dealer who sold them an RV will continue carrying those models. We urge all the members of this committee to vote yes on this important legislation and advance HB 605 to the full House. Thank you.
Thank you. Any question? I'm sorry, I missed you. Sorry.
Yep. Greg Merkel, President of Leo's Vacation Center and longtime member of the Maryland Dealers Association. We favor this law because it'll help level the playing field between the RV dealers and the manufacturer. It will help the consumers when they need warranty work, parts, additional services. Currently, we have no legislation that we're on a motorized motorhome. It's covered under new car law, but for any of the recreational vehicles that are not motorized, there is no type of agreement in the state of Maryland. So we're in favor of it. It would help the dealers and the consumer in the end result.
Thank you. And sorry, I almost jumped over you. Any questions for the sponsor or his panel?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quick question for the sponsor. So is this bill reflective of the concurrence that we accepted? In other words, what the Senate passed last year and we were going to accept but ran out of time?
It has very small changes. I can't tell you them off the top of my head, but I'd be happy to get them to you.
That would be great.
Very minor changes.
Thank you so much.
Any further questions? Okay, thank you all. That concludes the bill hearing on HB 605. We'll now turn to HB 639, another prodigal member of the committee, Delegate Weibel, Vehicle Laws, Protective Headgear Requirement Exception, in remembrance of Gary Pappy Ballard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's okay to bring up the panel. Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and honorable members of Environment and Transportation. For the record, I am Delegate Weibel. Please present House Bill 639. The bill addresses the topic of motorcycle helmets and provides an exception to the protective headgear requirement under certain circumstances. I am fully aware this issue is certainly not new to this committee. The bill is different in that it requires the operator to be at least 21 and one who has been licensed to operate a motorcycle for at least 2 years or has completed an approved motorcycle safety course or is a passenger. Eye protection would remain to be required.
The bill is named after Pappy Ballard. Those of you that knew Pappy know that you would find no greater advocate for motorcycle safety in this state. He advocated a motorcycle awareness campaign, which continues today. At the same time, he also advocated for choice when it came to wearing or not wearing a helmet. According to statistics published by Forbes, 18 states and the District of Columbia require motorcyclists to wear helmets. 29 states require helmet use under a certain age. 18 of those are 17 and under. Delaware is 18 and under. 9 of those are 20 and under, and Missouri is 25 and under. 3 states have no motorcycle helmet requirements at all. For those of us who reside in Western Maryland, many of our motorcyclists choose to ride in the state of Pennsylvania, whose law requires helmets for those in the 20 and under age category. Do helmets save lives? According to NHTSA, where helmet laws are mandated, 89% of the fatalities were attributable to riders who were wearing a helmet at the time of the incident. And in states where no helmet laws are required, 57% of the fatalities were not wearing head protection. So the results do seem to be contradictory and inconclusive. NHTSA also reports that almost 7 in 10, or 67% of motorcycle fatalities occur in urban areas. Pennsylvania, a 20 and under age requirement for helmet state, has 372,000 registered motorcyclists and had 3,580 motorcycle crashes, or less than 0.96% crash rate among registered motorcyclists in 2021. And for Delegate Stewart, general fund revenues from traffic citations are noted in the fiscal note to decrease minimally due to less of those being issued. And it does also indicate that any impact on Medicaid expenditures is assumed to be negligible. And Delegate Holmes, I do apologize in advance for voting against your bills, but ask that you not hold that against me. So I do ask for a favorable report on House Bill 639. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Vice Chairman, members of the committee. My name's Robert Spanberg Jr. I'm the current chairman of the board of A-Beta Maryland, the largest motorcycle rights organization in the state. Some would say the only motorcycle rights organization. I've been a member of the organization since 1986. I've been a registered motorcyclist in Maryland since 1983, a little over 40 years. Approaching this, we have a pretty decent statistical package that we put together. If there's any members of the committee that would like to see it, we shared it with some of the members of the committee this past Monday when we were up here lobbying on Monday night, which we've been doing for many, many years. There was no national helmet law of any kind until 1966. And in 1966, Maryland instituted a helmet mandate, which was repealed in 1979 under Governor Harry Hughes. For the next 13 years, Marylanders were able to choose whether they wanted to wear helmets or not. If you check the statistics as far as fatality rates, there's the changes in rates between mandatory helmet years and years when we were able to experience freedom of choice. They're insignificant, actually. And since that time, since 1992, when mandatory helmet use has come back in, if you look at the fatality rates, they go up, they go down, as they always have. And as I've said to numerous members of the committee, I'm not to appear cavalier, but I feel that your best chance of surviving an accident, which is kind of obvious, is to not have one. So education is a pretty important part of endeavoring with motorcycles as a way of life, which it is for us. I thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Chairman Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. My name is Ken Eaton, and I am the Executive Director of A-Beta Maryland Incorporated. As Bob said, we are a state's motorcyclist rights organization, and we are here speaking in favor of HB 639. A large portion of our membership feels very strongly that the freedom of choice regarding the use of motorcycle helmets in Maryland should be restored to us as motorcyclists. Currently, there are 33 other states that do not have mandatory helmet laws for motorcycles. These 33 states are not on the brink of bankruptcy because of motorcyclists not wearing helmets. Some wear them, some don't. We hear a lot from the medical side of the aisle, and I have no doubt that they see the absolute worst, but that's what they signed up to do. And I commend them for choosing that profession and doing what they do. However, as motorcyclists, we seem to get pigeonholed as being a social burden. Bikers as a group are blue collar, white collar, and no collar workers. There are numerous members here in the General Assembly that ride motorcycles. As many of you are aware, motorcycles are not an inexpensive hobby. Motorcycles range in cost from $5,000 to $50,000 and even more. Maryland is situated between two states that do not have mandatory helmet laws. Riders from these freedom of choice states will often bypass Maryland as long as possible. They spend their dollars in other states while they're riding. We're not asking to make motorcycle helmets illegal in Maryland, far from it. We're just asking that adult riders be provided the freedom of choice regarding helmet usage. I suspect that, like in many other states, there will be a pretty varied range of helmet usage. Some will use them, some will not, some will sometimes. I respectfully urge the committee to vote in support of HB 639.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the sponsor or his panel? I do not see any, so thank you. We do have a number of unfavorable witnesses in person. We'll start with Clifford Mitchell, Maryland Department of Health, Matthew McConaughey, Maryland Association of County Health Officers, Lisa Tenney, Maryland State Council Emergency Nurses Association, Brian Pugh, Brain Injury Association of Maryland. Please go ahead when you're ready.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. My name is Dr. Clifford Mitchell. I'm the director of the Environmental Health Bureau at the Maryland Department of Health. And the department appreciates the opportunity to testify here today, respectfully opposing and requesting an unfavorable report on House Bill 639. On average, 73 motorcycle riders and passengers are killed in traffic crashes each year in the state of Maryland. If this bill passes, that number is expected to increase, keeping Maryland's universal helmet law therefore intact, protects the lives, health, and safety of motorcyclists and their passengers here in Maryland. The department notes that helmets reduce the risk of dying in a motorcycle crash by 37%, and they they decrease the risk of traumatic brain injury by 69%. In addition, national statistics show that helmet use results in significant cost savings to society. A 2015 report by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration estimated that national universal helmet use would result in $7.2 billion in comprehensive cost savings annually. In conclusion, we know that helmet laws work. We know they save lives. We know they save lives here in the state of Maryland and costs here in the state of Maryland. And the department urges the committee to issue an unfavorable report on the legislation. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon. I'm Matthew McConaughey. I'm representing the Maryland Association of County Health Officers opposition position to House Bill 639. Evidence indicates that universal helmet laws increase helmet use, decrease motorcycle-related fatal and non-fatal injuries, and are substantially more effective than no law or than a partial motorcycle helmet laws, which apply only to riders who are young, novices, or have medical insurance coverage below certain thresholds. In 2017, motorcycle helmet use saved Maryland nearly $100 million in direct economic costs and over $590 million in comprehensive cost. If every motorcyclist had worn a helmet, comprehensive cost savings would have been an additional $65 million. The law that was repealed in 1979, because of the repeal, deaths and injuries climbed, leading to the reinstatement of this law in 1992. With increased motorways usage and volume as compared to the previously stated timeframe, it is expected that these numbers will exponentially be higher if this legislation passes. As a public health official, it is my duty to ensure I do what I can to protect the citizens of Maryland. And as the addition of an exception to this law is not something that is in the best interest of those that ride motorcycles. It is not in the best interest of Maryland's economy, the hospitals, and healthcare system, let alone the families and friends of motorcycle riders. It will only lead to more fatalities and increases in individuals with traumatic brain injuries. These injuries will put a strain on our recovering and overburdened healthcare systems and will impact long-term care resources as well as the families and communities of those injured. In summary, this bill will effectively increase death and brain injuries among motorcycle riders in Maryland. This is not in the public health interest nor in riders' best interest. For this reason, the Maryland Association of County Health Officials opposes this bill. Thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Good day, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lisa Tenney, and I am with the Maryland Emergency Nurses Association. We submitted written testimony in opposition to HB 639, along with the advocates for highway and auto safety and smarter. In doing a deep dive into this issue of wearing a helmet while riding a motorcycle, here are some thoughts to consider. For the motorcyclist, this is an emotional issue. And I get it. What better than to be an American that you get your freedom and let the wind blow through your hair to enhance your riding experience, right? As emergency nurses, it's also an emotional issue. It's not hard to do the work that we do in caring for broken people. The hardest part is dealing with the family members who have lost their family member or who end up taking care of that family member with a traumatic brain injury for the rest of their lives. That is the hard part, and that's why it's emotional for us. It's dealing with the families. One of the many hats that emergency nurses wear is to be an advocate for injury prevention, such as reducing infant maternal mortality and morbidity, and for staying the course on requiring motorcyclists to wear a helmet to prevent traumatic brain injuries and deaths. So thank you in advance for an unfavorable review for this. It's best to just be on the safe side. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman Corman, Vice Chairman Boyce, and the committee. My name is Brian Pugh. I'm the Executive Director of the Brain Injury Association of Maryland. 40 years ago, we were founded by family members and healthcare providers to serve as a resource for Maryland families struggling with brain injury. We asked this committee to give an unfavorable report to HB 639. In the 1940s, long before the interstate highway system, my grandfather, Samuel Boyce Dean, a lifelong Harley man, rode his Harley with a suicide shifter from Macon, Georgia to Los Angeles, California, and back with goggles, gauntlets, and a leather helmet at the time. He remained a Harley man and rode and worked on motorcycles his entire life. In college, my freshman year, my resident assistant had a Yamaha 350 he was looking to sell, but he let me ride it on the weekends around campus and around the mountain roads of Greenville, South Carolina. It was a blast. I always wore a helmet. I understand the thrill of riding motorcycles and the devoted lifestyle surrounding them, but I also understand the devastating effects that motorcycle crashes have on families. Through our 1-800 number, 800-221-6443, every year we talk with families with loved ones who acquired their brain injuries through motorcycle crashes. They tell of lifelong disabilities, cognitive impairments, mental illness, and emotional distress. The financial burden of brain injuries on individuals, families, and including the healthcare system is devastating. And most of the calls we received came from people that were wearing helmets. Allowing riders to forego helmets is a gamble with their lives, with the lives of their passengers, with the lives of other people on the road, the lives of their families, and our collective well-being as a community. This bill undermines years of progress in promoting motorcycle safety and the countless lives it saved. We have a responsibility to protect all road users and not cater to the false sense of individual liberty that ignores the devastating consequences of preventable brain injuries. We ask that you vote against this dangerous bill and uphold the current motorcycle helmet law and give an unfavorable report to House Bill 639. Thank you.
Thank you all. Are there any questions for this panel? Okay, thank you all again. We have additional in-person unfavorable testimony from Gary Schwartzbauer, Shock Trauma Center, and Kathleen Hoke, Legal Resource Center for Public Health Policy. Just do this.
Right. Chair Corman and Vice Chair Boyce and committee delegates, thank you for having us. My name is Gary Schwartzbauer. I'm the director of the state designated neurotrauma center at the R. Adams Cowley Shock Trauma Center, and I'm opposed to the passage of House Bill 639. Patients arrive at shock trauma in a large busy area called the Trauma Resuscitation Unit. There are trauma attending and call carry two-way radio where you can hear the incoming calls from help from all around the state. It gives me a great sense of pride to hear the attending say shock trauma online, because I know those 3 words are a lifeline to the patient. And I also know when I hear the 3 words motorcycle crash, that lifeline is even more critical. As a neurosurgeon, I'm sometimes called upon to take the skull off a swollen brain of an injured motorcycle rider. The surgery, called a decompressive craniectomy, can be life-saving, but creates a large defect on the entire side of the head. And is disfiguring and leaves the soft brain under the skin unprotected. If they survive, patients need to wear a protective helmet until the bone is put back months later. So you can wear a helmet now or wear a helmet later. As a critical care intensivist, I care for the same patients in the neurotrauma critical care unit, deciding on ways to treat the pain, making them comfortable on a ventilator, finding the best ways to feed them, keep their bodies from wasting away and succumbing to overwhelming infections, as they often can't care for themselves. Among the many patients, I am haunted by a 10-year-old son brought to the bedside of a dying patient who innocently asked repeatedly for his father to wake up, not knowing that moments before, our care team had discussed with a family that the patient would die, despite all of our interventions. He was an illegally unhelmeted motorcycle rider that lost control of his bike. Foundations of House Bill 639 are predicated on false assumptions, as outlined in my written testimony. The mandatory motorcycle helmet law is not a freedom of choice. It's a matter of sound public policy. No end there. Thank you for consideration.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, and my particular District 11 member. I'm Kathy Hoke. I'm a professor at the University of Maryland Carey School of Law, where I also direct the Legal Resource Center for Public Health Policy. I teach and practice public health law through the law school. I'm here today in opposition to House Bill 639. When we take a look at public health measures and changing them, we do so when doing that will reduce what we call morbidity and mortality, or injury and death, in the community. So it's fair to change public health measures when that's the outcome. But here we have an effective public health measure that reduces injury and death in our community, and repealing it for any part of the population will result in increased injury and death. I will say that the provisions related to who could go helmetless don't protect anyone. It doesn't matter how old you are, how long you've been operating a motorcycle, or how many courses you've taken. When a reckless driver or a negligent driver or unexpected road conditions come your way, you cannot protect against that. A helmet will help protect against the worst of the possible injuries. I'm usually here asking for public health measures that cost money. I'm really happy to be here today in opposition to a bill that will save you money, but more importantly, save lives. I urge an unfavorable report on House Bill 639. Thank you.
Good afternoon. Can't touch the button, so just wait. Just wait till it turns on. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you for inviting the National Transportation Safety Board to testify today. My name is Nicholas Worrell. I'm a Marylander, 8-year veteran of the United States Marine Corps, hoorah, and a passionate motorcyclist since my Marine Corps days. My job in the Marines was protecting American lives. My job at the NTSB is still protecting American lives. Crashes happen fast and in the blink of an eye. Some pay the ultimate price. Douglas Pimpkin, husband of former colleague Susan Pimpkin, died on riding Route 210 in Prince George's County in 2021. In PG County alone, we have lost firefighter Arthur Brown, Marcus Harris, and Lemuel Limpley in recent years. You heard the statistics, no need for me to repeat them. Others live, but with sometimes life-altering injuries, as stated in 2005, cost per helmeted rider injured in a crash was $71,000. The cost of unhelmeted riders were $310,000. The press protection is a helmet that complies with universal standards. As stated before, unhelmeted motorcyclists are 3 times more likely to suffer traumatic brain injury, yet HB 639 will allow for ride-in without that protective gear, resulting in more dead motorcyclists and more motorcyclists with brain injuries. Count on it. The data states for itself. Bottom line, universal helmet law save lives, reduce injuries, and avoid unnecessary costs. We have such a law in Maryland. I'm urging you not to throw it away. Keep Maryland helmet requirements. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions for this panel? Okay, I do not see any. We have a virtual unfavorable witness that will bring up Omar Masood, Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Please go ahead, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Omar Masood. I'm the Director of State Government Relations for Advocates for Highway and Auto Safety. Advocates is an alliance of consumer, medical, public health, law enforcement, safety groups, insurance companies, and agents working to improve road safety. I appreciate the opportunity to testify in opposition to House Bill 639. Advocates also has jointly submitted a written statement with the Maryland State Council of Emergency Nurses Association and the Skilled Motorcyclists Association, Responsible Trained Educated Riders, also known as SMARTER. 2021 set a record for motorcyclist fatalities in the United States, and early estimates for 2022 indicate a 5% increase on that number. Motorcycle riders are nearly 28 times more likely to die in a crash than passenger vehicle occupants. On Maryland roadways, 75 motorcyclists lost their lives in 2022, and fatalities and injuries of motorcycle riders exceeded the 5-year average. In addition to the significant physical and emotional toll on Maryland families, motor vehicle crashes cost nearly $6 billion annually. This is essentially a crash tax of $977 on each Marylander. Repealing Maryland's all-rider motorcycle helmet law, which has been preventing deaths and injuries for more than 3 decades, would be a deadly and costly mistake. Laws requiring all riders to wear a motorcycle helmet are effective and life-saving. In states with all-rider helmet laws, use was 86% compared to only 53% in states without such a law. Maryland's law is working to ensure helmet use. In 2021, 20% of motorcyclist fatalities were unhelmeted, compared to 50% in Pennsylvania, which does not have a universal helmet law. Experience from states that have repealed all rider laws demonstrates the deadly consequences of doing so. In Michigan, which we urge you to make an unfavorable recommendation on this bill. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions for this panelist? Okay, thank you again. That concludes the bill here on HB 639. We'll now turn to HB 652 from Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, vehicle laws, electric vehicles, weight limits. Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, if you have a panel, feel free to bring them up, and welcome back to your committee.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, members of the Environment and Transportation Committee. It's good to see you again. Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, thank you. I'm here to present House Bill 652. House Bill 652 is a very, very simple bill. I know you hear this all the time, but it's a pretty simple bill. It basically takes Class 8 trucks, which are the big semi trucks, which are currently limited to 80,000 pounds. And for electric trucks, electric semis, it pushes that limit to 82,000 pounds, which is exactly what the feds are doing right now. So all the bill does is put the state of Maryland into the same posture as the federal posture, as well as I think 13 or 14, 15 other states are doing the same thing. So that's really the essence of the bill. I do want to stress to many of you that you know that I work on a lot of EV policy. And one of the really, really cool things about electric trucks is that because they have regenerative braking like all cars, they don't use a lot of brakes on a regular basis. If you think about a big downhill and a mountain and those ramps you see off on the right side in case vehicles get out of control, the big trucks, you don't see that so much with electric trucks because as they come down the mountain, that electric motor is gobbling up all that energy going down the mountain and pouring it into those batteries. So it's like taking a truck and shifting it down a couple of gears. So there are a lot of advantages of electric trucks. I'm sure you know many of them, and I'm happy to talk more about them in detail if you like. I don't want to geek out too much. But if there are any questions, I'm happy to answer. I could just pass them to the panel members, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, and members of the committee. I'm Ashley Bagwell here this afternoon on behalf of Tesla in strong support of House Bill 652. Thank you to Delegate Fraser Hidalgo for introducing this bill, and thank you to this committee for all of the work y'all have done from a policy perspective to encourage and incentivize the adoption of electric vehicles, as well as the adoption of electric medium and heavy duty trucks. As y'all are certainly aware, as a result of regulations promulgated by the administration last year, Maryland became the 10th state to adopt the Advanced Clean Trucks rule as well. We believe that House Bill 652 is consistent with all of these policy measures. Here with me this afternoon, though virtually, is Zach Kahn with Tesla, and he can speak to the merits of this bill as well as what Tesla is doing in the heavy duty truck space. And so with that, Mr. Chairman, I will conclude and we'll turn it over to Mr. Kahn after Mr. Campion, I'm sure, and we'll urge a favorable vote on House Bill 652.
But we can just go with Mr. Khan first, if that works for everybody. Is that fine, Delegate?
Yep, that's great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Khan, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, members of the committee. As Ashley mentioned, my name is Zach Kahn. I'm a Senior Policy Manager with Tesla. I would like to thank Delegate Fraser Hidalgo for his continued leadership on all sorts of EV policy and for introducing this bill, providing a 2,000-pound weight exemption. Tesla's mission is to accelerate the world's transition to sustainable energy. We are a global leader, as you all know, in electric vehicle and charging infrastructure, and we recently deployed our first commercial Class 8 electric trucks, the Tesla Semi. These trucks are already changing the industry's understanding of what's possible with battery electric trucking. The North American Council on Freight Efficiency recently did a program called Run on Less, where 3 Teslas from Pepsi's Sacramento facility participated, where these trucks were tracked every day as they went to work. And these trucks were doing, our trucks have a 500-mile plus range, and these trucks were utilizing fast charging to get over 800, 900, and even nearly 1,100 miles in a single day of service. The one issue that with electric trucks is that they currently weigh more than their diesel equivalents. As battery technology continues to improve and gets lightweighted, that differential will decline. But in the interim, as Delegate Fraser Hidalgo mentioned, the federal government in 2019, in an effort to remove a potential barrier to adoption for operators, codified a 2,000-pound weight exemption for electric trucks. This exemption applies to all electric trucks utilizing the interstate highway system. And since then, more than a dozen states, 15, as the delegate mentioned, have codified similar weight exemptions for electric trucks that use the state highway system. It's one of the tools in the state's toolkit that can be used to drive electric truck adoption. Maryland has been a leading state in adopting good EV policy and regulations. thanks to a lot of the folks in the room today. And we strongly support a favorable report of this bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Campion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. For the record, Louis Campion with Maryland Motor Truck Association. Just very briefly, because I think most of my testimony you've already heard. I'll just make two observations. One is in a 2022 study by the American Transportation Research Institute, with today's battery technology, the lost carrying capacity of an electric truck is about 25%, or about 13,800 pounds on a 5-axle tractor trailer. And you've already heard how the feds have recognized this. And so they've at least offset a portion of that with the 2,000-pound weight allowance. The one thing I want to note to alleviate any concerns is that if you pass this bill and we expand that weight allowance then to state roads, it doesn't impede a jurisdiction from still posting a different maximum weight allowance, right? So if you have bridges that aren't capable of the additional weight, they still get to be posted at whatever the safe legal weight would be. And that's really important to note. We don't get that weight allowance under this bill. The posted limit is still the maximum limit. So this would apply in all of those areas where essentially the interstate weight limits are in play and Maryland state limits are in play. But all of those scenarios where you have different bridge weights, different road weights, you see no trucks over 5 tons or 10,000 pounds that are very common in certain areas. That doesn't change. So I just want to alleviate any concerns associated with that. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Louis, you just touched on my question, and that was, have you all seen MDOT's letter of information?
I have not seen it. I talked with the SHA administrator briefly before the hearing today, but I have not actually seen the letter.
Okay, because they talk about the federal government's Fixing America's Surface Transportation Act, the FAST Act, that authorizes vehicles that are primarily, basically ZVIC, to exceed interstate weight limits, and that Maryland has provided for an allowance of alternatively fueled vehicles that is consistent with the FAST Act and that exceeds the requirements of HB 652 since January 24, 2020. So in light of that, I'm not sure what else this bill would do. Can you help me understand, please?
So I'm sorry.
No, go.
So I will just tell you that our understanding of the Maryland weight allowances are that Maryland has a 1,000 pound weight allowance actually that applies on state roads that is not specific to electric vehicles, and it's only on gross vehicle weight. So that's an important distinction. I'd be happy to circle back with the department and get further clarification on their letter if that's helpful.
If you would, please. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Delegate Teresa.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And let me say that I'm eager to pass legislation that makes us moving to electric trucks more likely, and have a lot of faith in this particular sponsor to be the one to work on that. But I guess I'm just curious about the bridge safety piece of this. And so are the weight limits not based on what engineers have determined are the appropriate safe weight limits on bridges?
Do you want to answer? Certainly. No, it actually is. So this bill would not supersede bridge weight limits. So for example, there is a major bridge that's been going under construction for a number of years, actually right outside of the Port of Baltimore, that actually has a carrying capacity, used to have a carrying capacity of more than 80,000 pounds. During the reconstruction work and the like, that is limited to 80,000 pounds. So there's a lot of oversized loads that come out of the Port of Baltimore. The current posted bridge weight is 80,000 pounds. And so no vehicle can exceed that. Similar with this, any bridge may be posted at what the engineers deem as safely legal, and this does not expand that in any way, shape, or form.
Okay, so that 80,000 is per vehicle, is that?
A 5-axle tractor trailer, the maximum typical weight is 80,000 pounds with permits, without factoring in permits and other exceptions.
Okay, so then I'm confused. What weight limits? If that's not the bridge weight, and I'm not sure if I'm being heard. If it's not the bridge weight limits, then what is the limit we're looking at here? How is that different?
So this allows an increase in the gross vehicle weight limit to 82,000 pounds. There are also axle weight limits that also would be given that same tolerance. Okay, so on the highway, on a state highway that doesn't have a lower posted speed, a lower posted weight, then you would be able to use that tolerance. But on a bridge that wasn't rated for more than 80,000 pounds, you could not do that. In the example I gave, where there is a bridge that was rated for more that's under construction, when that bridge is completed, for example, and it has a weight limit that exceeds 80,000 pounds, you would be able to use that up to 82,000 over that particular bridge.
Maybe I can just jump in. So the feds have already said that this is the direction that they want to go. So anything that you see, any major highway, any major interstate is already set to go above 80,000 to 82,000 pounds. And it's just because the weight of the batteries based on current technology weighs more.
Right, I get that.
So
piece.
the only thing that I think that Mr. Campion is suggesting is that on specific bridges that are not major thoroughfare bridges like 95, then that would be an issue. But on all those major roadways, it's not going to be an issue. The federal government has already determined that it's safe to do so. Does that help at all?
Probably. I can talk to you offline about
Okay,
this.
thank you.
I still have the concern, but I have a feeling it's going to be satisfied, so we can talk offline.
Thank you.
Delegate Allen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Campion, just a quick question for my own curiosity, because I've been out of the industry for a bit, so I'm curious. Do we first, and I know I'm asking you to look in the future here, do we foresee needing to increase this limit at any time in the next few decades? Is the technology going to get to the point where we're looking at 100,000 pounds, something like that?
I would assert the exact opposite. So right now, there's a lot of weight in batteries, but the amount of R&D and manufacturing that is coming around the corner in a very short period of time, I think you're going to see massive cuts in weights of electric vehicles, and trucks to be one of them. I will tell you, and I think Zach, if you want to correct me, one of the reasons, if I'm wrong, one of the reasons why Tesla isn't producing more of their semi trucks that go over 500 miles on a charge. Over 500 miles on a charge. One of the reasons they're not producing more is because it takes they're taking several cars out of production in order to produce one semi truck. But as time goes on, those weights will come down. We're going to see pouch batteries. We're going to see all kinds of new technology, solid state batteries, and that's going to bring weight down and energy density up. So that 500 pounds, that 500 miles, you'll see 600 to 700 and 800 miles. And for the several thousand pounds in batteries alone, you'll see that those percentages come down. Is that accurate, Mr. Khan?
I would say the part about the battery weights coming down is definitely accurate. Us not producing as many is more about building out a new factory to build them at scale, which we're doing in Nevada. So that is our bigger holdup, is getting a factory that allows us to build them at scale, to bring down the pricing, to make them as cost competitive as possible.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Ziegler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there at all a concern about roads that are not major interstates, but that may not have been posted with overpasses or things like that, because the assumption of the county is that, there's an 80,000 pound limit, so we don't need to post it?
So let me say that there are numerous examples of trucks that are over 80,000 pounds, but just require a permitting process through SHA. For example, most of the containerized cargo that comes out of the Port of Baltimore can actually operate up to 90,000 pounds still on 5 axles. that operates under a permit scenario. So I would suggest delegate no and as I think I mentioned earlier, SHA already gives you a 1,000 pound tolerance on state roads anyway. So I think you're talking about a very minimal increase, relatively speaking.
Thank you.
Last question, Delegate Jacobs.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So this could go to Delegate DFH or Lewis, either one of you, but so this bill pertains to three axle, 4-axle, 5-axle, all the trucks, right?
It does not specify a particular axle configuration, so it would follow the federal allowance, which is 2,000 pounds, based on the formation of the vehicle, right? So then you start getting into factors, Delegate, that you're probably familiar with from your background about axle spacing and distance between axles, which is called, I didn't want to confuse people, the bridge formula. Right. So vehicles are still subject to the bridge formula, which, again, not wanting to confuse things, is different than the allowed weight on a bridge. So the bridge formula would be in place still based on all of those factors.
Right. So do you perceive an increased fee on this weight increase?
At this point in time, I would just be purely guessing. And I do agree with the sponsor's earlier comments that we anticipate battery weight would go down over time.
I understand that, and I would hope so. But, we've heard from SHA that we got all these projects going on in state that aren't funded right now, that we got a huge deficit in the Transportation Trust Fund. And so if you're going to kick these weights up, there's fees going up all over the state right now. I'm just wondering if that's in part of this bill, is to increase these weights to put more, wear and tear on the roads when we're not getting as much work done. Is there going to be an additional fee to when this weight is bumped up to help offset some of that maintenance?
So I would just respectfully say that that's not in the bill to increase any fees. And when I was chair of the Transportation Subcommittee, we did a lot of these all the time, especially for rural kind of farm vehicles that wanted additional weight. And we were always giving exemptions for additional weight for farm vehicles. And I don't recall ever having additional fees associated with farm vehicles being able to add additional weight.
Well, most of these farm vehicles were real tight radius of distance traveled, whereas these are not necessarily limited to shorter distance. Could be anywhere in the state of Maryland.
It could be, yeah. And the other thing that I would say is, I'm sure you're aware, I don't know if the committee's been out there, but there's a big Volvo manufacturing plant in Hagerstown, and they are manufacturing long haul, I think, Class 8 vehicle trucks as well, aren't they? So
doing the powertrains.
So the fee, there's no fee increase.
There's no, to answer your question, Delegate, no, there is not a fee increase in this bill.
I think that's what I want to know. Thank you.
Delegate Jacobs, we're always looking for transportation funding ideas. So if you've got a late filed bill that you want to introduce, I can help you get it out of rules. With no further questions, that concludes the bill hearing on HB 652. We'll now turn to HB 689 from our friend Delegate Fraser Hidalgo, electric vehicles, repeal of excise tax credit and establishment of rebate program.
Thank you. Thank you, members of Environment and Transportation. Again, it's good to be here. Thank you for your time. As many of you have worked on this over the years, you know that the practice of this committee has been to promote, and the practice of the General Assembly has been to promote electric vehicles. The purchase of electric vehicles, we have had probably half a dozen or more electric vehicle clean car bills over the years. A couple of years ago, we did the largest one that we had done in the history of Maryland, which was an amazing bill that provided about $8.25 million to electric vehicles every year for the next 4 years. That just started this past year. One of the things that the federal government did, which was really amazing, is they provided a tax and they provided a point of sale rebate. So at the time that you purchased the vehicle. And we had talked about doing that in the past. We had talked about a lot of different aspects of the bill in the past. But one of the things we didn't do, and now the feds have done it, so I think it's a lot easier for us to do it, is to provide that not so much as a tax credit as much as it is as a rebate at the point of sale. So when someone goes into a car dealer and they purchase that electric vehicle, they can get up to a $3,000 rebate right then and there. It's $2,000, $1,000 for motorcycles, and I think $2,000 for three-wheeled vehicles as well. So the point is to just make it easier for some folks. Not everybody has $3,000 in state-related, I guess, issues with the comptroller's office and has to pay, for their taxes. So this allows people to use that excise tax or that excise credit right there at the point of sale, which I think is very, very important. Studies are proving that the idea of getting that money ahead of time and not having to wait 6 months or 9 months to maybe get some of that money back really helps to accelerate the transition of people purchasing electric vehicles. So that's what the bill does. It sets up and it brings in the comptroller a little bit and the administration to ensure that everything is communicated so that people get their tax, so that they get their rebate right there at the point of sale. There are some other limits on it, some limits that are similar to what the feds do. I will leave that up to the committee whether they want to continue to go with that or not. There's also I know that there are some other folks from SHA and MVA that are interested in this bill as well. They have some amendments. I think that they have some wonderful amendments. I would just caution the committee on a couple of things. And I know that the chair and I have had conversations about this over the years. And that is at one point when we go between Clean Cars Acts, sometimes those folks apply for incentives. And then what ends up happening is the incentives run out. And when the incentives run out, unfortunately, in many cases, they purchase that car thinking they were going to get that incentive. So when there's a lag between bills, unfortunately, what's happened in some cases is folks have not been able to realize or get that incentive because the money ran out or because it's now a different bill. Mostly it's because it's a different bill. So I would just suggest to the subcommittee and the committee, as you're looking at this, please be cognizant of whatever amendments that you take to ensure that those people that have already applied and don't get caught in between and don't get their money, because we've done that on this committee before. And I think that the chair and I have had more than one occasion where we have had to let down constituents very gently that they're not getting their $3,000. And that is not a fun position. That is not a fun position to be in. Also, I know that there's some conversations about amendments to take advantage of some of the new pickup trucks. So Rivian and Tesla and Ford. Ford has a really cool truck, the F-150 Lightning. As the other manufacturers, there's going to be more trucks coming on board. So if it's the will of the committee and the subcommittee to look into trying to incentivize those as well by changing some pieces, I think that's important. And then our own Patrick Tracy and I in the committee worked very, very hard on distinguishing the difference between MSRP and base price. And there was a lot of work to settle on the definition of base price. I would just strongly encourage the committee and the subcommittee to continue to make sure that that is the proper way to define this bill so that we don't put ourselves in a little bit of a position that's uncomfortable, shall we say, as has happened in the past. And I know that Council has worked very, very hard on that in the past. And with that, I am happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Hey, sorry, new guy here, Delegate Fraser-Hidalgo. So can you just make sure I understand? This doesn't increase the size of the tax credit when it becomes a rebate. It's still the $3,000?
That's correct.
And the overall amount of money the state is appropriating, your bill doesn't change that?
Doesn't change that at all. Everything stays the same.
It's just the method and the timing of when it's provided to the consumer.
That is absolutely accurate.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Delegate Foley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Delegate, for bringing this bill. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
A couple questions. One, does this apply to dealers who sell used electric vehicles?
It does not. I know that Delegate Jazz Lewis has a bill, and I don't know if you've heard it yet, to have some version of apply to used vehicles. Depending on how you want to cut that, that's up to the committee. I don't have.
Okay, but this is just for new vehicles.
That's correct. This is just for new vehicles.
Okay. And then my second question is more of a suggestion. I'll try to put it in the form of a question. On page 7, line 1, It says under this section to persons, this, what starts by saying that the administration prioritize outreach regarding the rebate under this section to
Right.
persons who consume large amounts of gasoline. I would just suggest maybe if you're amenable to change that to persons who have vehicles who consume large amounts of gasoline. I got this picture of some guy drinking out of a gas can. But I mean, I think that's what you mean, but.
That's
yeah,
what I mean. I
yeah.
mean, the objective
That's just a
here.
suggestion.
No, I mean, there's two parts I think that make this a little bit different than before, and that is kind of outreach to
Yeah.
those folks.
No, it's a good idea.
That's number one. And number two is, the high mileage. So every high mileage vehicle you take off the road is more tonnage removed in greenhouse gas emissions. So that's why that's in, but
No,
I think that's a
understood.
technical piece that
Yeah.
maybe we didn't read quite as literal as you did, and maybe we need to make an adjustment.
Anyway, thank you.
Thank you.
Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, delegate. As I sit in your chair, I have some questions for you.
Okay.
You said that you had a couple of conversations. Have you talked to MDOT? Have you seen their letter?
I don't know if I've seen that letter, but I have had conversations, and they have some amendments I think that they're excited about, and I think I'm probably excited about most of their amendments. I'm happy to have an offline conversation with you, amendment by amendment, if you'd like, but they were very, very positive conversations and some good ideas.
Great. Well, rather than taking up the committee's time, let's you and I connect offline so we can talk about some of those amendments.
Absolutely. I'd
Wonderful.
be delighted to. Thank you.
Any additional questions? Delegate Stein?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Delegate, good to see you. I think your bill makes a whole lot of sense. It's a great idea. Going to agency amendments, I wanted to ask if you felt the same way about MDE's proposed amendments to align eligibility with respect to the car in terms of price as well as type of vehicle to the federal standards. So I wanted to ask if you had any thoughts about that.
Not directly at the moment. I'd like to go over exactly what their amendments are line by line. I do know that some of the conversations I had with them is about expanding the vehicles, expanding the kinds of vehicles to go after those like vans and trucks that are coming. And I think that is a really great idea. And I think that's something that should be discussed. I think the devil is in the details, and that is, what does that base price look like? And kind of doing the math, just like, you do the math on whether you take used vehicles as well, as the other delegate Jazz Lewis has a bill on, and just trying to see from the larger macro picture, what's going to get the most vehicles on the road and what's going to remove the most emissions possible. I would say I think it's a great conversation to drill down on. And as you know, in subcommittee, it always goes in one way, and often after a lot of conversations around the table, it comes out slightly different. Sometimes very different, and that's okay. That's okay, as long as it's well thought out.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Delegate Otto, the birthday boy.
Hello,
Thank you,
birthday boy.
Mr. Chairman. Welcome back.
Happy birthday, Delegate Otto.
Thank you. Tell me, the available funds for this program, have they been utilized to their full extent?
I believe that there are some monies still available for this fiscal year, but I think they're going to be all used up in the next 3 to 6 weeks.
So what's the advantage of changing something that was?
Because I think it makes it easier for some people at the point of purchase, and it also opens it up to more folks that maybe don't have quite as much disposable income. I think one of the important pieces of this bill is that it opens it up to allow more people that don't have as much disposable income to actually get that rebate at the point of sale of the vehicle, as opposed to only if you have the disposable income and you're worthy of it on your taxes. So if you, in other words, if you're making $150,000 a year or $125,000 a year, then you're most likely going to get your rebate. But if you're making $25,000 or $50,000 a year, you might not have that. You might not have that, and so then you don't qualify and you don't get the money. And that kind of is something we're trying.
So you
to
want to use the money up faster?
No, I want to make sure that everybody gets an equal opportunity to take advantage of it, and that's what this does.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do not see any other questions, so thank you to the sponsor. We have a number of pieces of in-person testimony. We have favorable from J. Peter Kitzmiller, Maryland Automobile Dealers Association, and Michael Johansson, representing the Washington Area New Auto Dealers Association. And then we'll take a piece of virtual favorable testimony if they're there as well, but you guys go ahead.
May I add one last piece, Mr. Chair?
If it's sure.
I would just say that this policy is always changing. It's always moving. So what you see in the beginning of session or even a few months ago, depending on what's going on in the markets, sometimes is worthy of discussion of making change. And I'm okay with that. It's moving so quickly. That's all.
Great.
Thank you. You're good. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm Mike Johansson here on behalf of the Washington Area New Auto Dealers Association, and I'm going to testify and then have to leave. I have another meeting, so I apologize for that. Point of sale rebate is critically important for consumers who are looking to make that decision on whether or not a more expensive EV as compared to a new vehicle on the lot that happens to be gasoline, whether or not it's worth it. And if that rebate is part of that initial purchasing power, it's much more important. Most people finance their cars. So if they have to look at that, not as the point of sale, but they get the money from the state or off their taxes months later, they may actually include most of that $3,000 in their loan. And even if they get the $3,000 a few months later, that loan payment is still higher. So we really support the rebate at the time of sale. The complexity of this bill does not need to follow the federal bill. The federal tax credit was an income tax credit only. So it started as a tax credit you could take on your taxes, and they just changed it to be point of sale. So the dealer gets its money at the time so the customer can do it, and then the dealer files the paperwork. Please, you don't need to do that. The dealers actually collect your state money, and we're going to send you $6,000 or $4,000 worth of taxes. We can deduct it at the time and give it to the customer. That's what we did 10 years ago when we had this program. You don't need this complicated tax form issue. Rebate at the time of sale. The dealers have state money. They're about to pay you money. They'll just pay you less than what they've already had on the table. Don't look at the federal program with respect to a mechanism because it's awkward. The agencies will have a lot of work to do, and you're not going to really, there's no benefit to doing that with respect to this. So simplicity from our perspective is best. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, my name is Peter Kitzmiller. I'm the president of the Maryland Automobile Dealers Association. We represent 300 franchise new car and truck dealers and our 20,000 employees here today in support of the legislation. All incentives, not just EV incentives, have to have three characteristics to work to sell cars. They need to be simple, they need to be certain, and they need to be at the point of sale. We've already heard about the point of sale and the simplicity thing. I think Mr. Johansson also touched on. I'm going to talk about the certainty. There was a question a few minutes ago about the status of our EV incentive fund right now. It ran out Tuesday afternoon, I think at 6 o'clock. And so for the next 6 months, when a customer comes in to buy an EV from one of my dealers, we're going to have to tell them they don't get the incentive. And Delegate Fraser Dugga talked about talking to a couple of constituents and how unhappy they were. Stop and think if you're a car dealer and have to have that consistently, because that's one of the things people are counting on when they come in the front door right now. And for the next 6 months, we have to tell them, sorry, there is no more money in the fund. The dealers would be more than amenable to reducing the $3,000 to maybe $2,000 a car if we could make the money last for the entire year so we don't have to tell people, hey, there is no incentive here. The federal tax credit that everybody talked about, it's $7,500 starting on January 1. We now front the customer the money when you come into the showroom. We give you the $7,500 at point of sale, and then the dealership files for reimbursement with the IRS, and they reimburse us supposedly within 72 hours. And frankly, for the first month, it's worked pretty well. The last point I would make about incentives, I will say that I watched the briefing from the secretary from MDE a couple of weeks ago to this committee, and I was very concerned to hear that they feel that they need $300 million a year in EV incentives in order to meet the sales mandates under Clean Cars 2. We have $8.25 million in our current EV incentive fund. I would assume under our current budget conditions, we're not going to change that. We're not asking to change it, but it's very concerning when the department says we need $300 million a year to reach those sales mandates. Thank you. Be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Mr. Sergeant, please go ahead. You're on mute, sir. You're on mute, Mr. Sergeant. There you go.
How about now?
Perfect.
Sorry about that.
No worries.
Good afternoon, Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Rob Sargent. I'm the Policy Director for Cultura, which is an organization committed to accelerating the switch from gasoline to cleaner alternatives. And really appreciate the offer to testify in strong support of HB 689, sponsored by Delegate Fraser Hidalgo and others. We hope you'll act favorably on the bill. It adopts recommendations from the recently released climate pollution reduction plan, including the provision we've talked about to make incentives available at the point of sale. We're particularly supportive of the provision to prioritize outreach on the incentives to low and moderate income drivers who use, not consume, lots of gasoline. As you all know, transportation pollution is a big source of Maryland's greenhouse gases, and most of those come from cars and light trucks. So a rapid switch from gasoline to electricity will help reduce harmful tailpipe pollution and is essential to meeting the state's emission targets. Making the incentives available at point of sale will help boost Maryland's existing EV programs by removing an obstacle for many folks to switch to an EV. And Maryland can further accelerate cuts in emissions by helping to get the biggest users of gasoline, we call them super users, to make the transition. Our research shows that 8.2% of Maryland super users, those using more than 1,200 gallons a year, consume 30% of the state's gasoline. They burn an average of 4.6 times more gasoline than other drivers. And 43% of them earn below the median income, spending an average of 14% of their income on gasoline. So switching low-income super users to an EV will save families an average of $345 a month on fuel and hundreds more on maintenance. We're thrilled Maryland's considering this approach, and we hope this bill gets a favorable report. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I have a question from Delegate Stein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Peter, I just wanted to check with you about what Mr. Johansson said about simplicity in application of the program. He was saying that it would be better rather than for the controller's office to write a check to each dealer that sells EVs for each $3,000 paid up front. That'd be better to offset it against taxes owed, I guess, for the excise tax and whatever other taxes that are owed by the dealer. Do you agree with that?
Yes. So the previous iteration of this program, the way it worked was you came in to buy, you bought an EV, and let's say you owed $3,000 in excise tax because of the cost of the car. And I don't remember what the rebate amount was. Let's say it was $2,000. We simply subtracted $2,000 and sent MV $1,000 instead of sending them $3,000. I think the simplicity thing is very important. The federal rebate is a lot of money, $7,500. That gets people's attention. I think it's getting people into the showroom. The problem is it's so complicated. Only 14 models currently are eligible, but we're telling everybody after a $7,500 rebate, they come in and they find, and they're very unhappy. The EV they've picked out, it does. So the more complicated we make this, and I understand that there's policy concerns about where the battery was mined, and people with certain income were not comfortable with giving them an incentive or a rebate. But at the end of the day, my understanding is the purpose of this is to get as many EVs on the road as quickly as possible. And all these hurdles are not getting us there.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I could just follow up one question. So Peter, it sounds like you're not supportive of MDE's proposed amendment to tie eligibility for the types of vehicles to the federal criteria. You think it should remain as it is?
I think the simpler we can make it, the better. I haven't seen their amendments. I mean, again, I think the biggest issue is the point of sale is certainly the most important. And secondarily, if we can make it more certain, if we can make the money last, again, less per car. I don't know how we get there, but make it last the entire year instead of like here, we had 6 months to go. And that's selling EVs at about 9% rate. Let's say we have a good year and we get it to 12. That thing's going to run out in 2 months, and that's a problem. So,
yeah, thank you.
I do not see any additional questions. I'm sorry, Delegate Morgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Real quick one. So
maybe you could explain to me. I just looked up the price of a Ford F-150 and a Ford F-150 EV for 2024. So the base price for the gas was $39,000. The baseline for the EV was $55,000. So there's a 41% difference. Can you tell us why the difference is so big for, and then we're trying to incentivize?
Are you asking why the EV is that dramatic 41% more expensive?
Yeah.
I think that there's no question it's the cost of the battery and the technology. The battery is what right now is the biggest cost component of an EV vehicle. And again, people talk about, hey, that cost is going to go down. I think it probably will, but it's a significant, those numbers you gave are pretty consistent across all models. An EV is probably going to be that much more expensive than a gas, right?
So we want to incentivize people to spend more money because we're making a product that's pretty much unaffordable at the present time for the majority of the population.
I think there's no question that one of the hurdles to faster EV adoption is the fact that they are significantly more expensive. Absolutely no question about that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you again. We have some favorable amendment in-person testimony. Joshua Fisher, Alliance for Automotive Innovation, and Jeremy D. Baker, Maryland Department of the Environment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Josh Fisher. I'm with the Alliance for Automotive Innovation. We are a trade association representing the automakers producing the most vehicles sold in the U.S. each year. So we are favorable with amendments. I'll try to be quick here. Delegate Stein, it sounds like the MDE amendment about the price eligibility that we would support. That was one of our recommendations. Delegate Fraser Hidalgo's bill borrows from the income eligibility in the IRA. So we would also encourage the vehicle price eligibility as well to mirror this bill. So thank you for pointing that out. The fact of the matter is the biggest hurdles to EV adoption consistently cited by consumers are the cost of the vehicle and the lack of charging infrastructure. And the wave of early adopters, it's starting to recede, and the next group of customers are proving a little more hesitant to purchase a vehicle that might come with some compromise. But that's where policies like House Bill 689 can help. As the Maryland Department of Environment's climate pollution reduction plan from last year notes, EVs are still priced too high for low and moderate income consumers. And so state incentives in the near term will help incentivize those folks to purchase an EV and spur Maryland's EV sales. And also to cite another report, the Commission on Climate Change, I think Peter mentioned, suggested $300 million annual appropriation is what is required. Living on planet Earth, we know that's not realistic, but 8.25 million is also not getting it done. It's ran out in 6 months. Every time this program has run out of funds in the past, EV sales have declined, and Maryland EV sales need to skyrocket over the next 2 years. We're at about 11% right now, and in a little over 2 years, they need to be 43%. That's the ratio of vehicles that our members are going to deliver to Maryland dealers in beginning in calendar year 2026. So funding needs to be increased. The program needs to be extended. I know those are longer term conversations, but at the end of the day, we do support the changes in House Bill 689. So thank you for your time.
Good afternoon, Chair Corman, Vice Chair Boyce, and members of the committee. For the record, Jeremy D. Baker on behalf of the Department of the Environment in support of House Bill 689 with amendments. Overall, the department supports this bill. As this committee knows, the on-road transportation represents more than 1/3 of the state's greenhouse gas emissions, which is the largest contributing sector. The department does have 4 amendments to offer that would improve the bill's overall effectiveness. First, the bill currently links the ability of an auto dealer to provide a rebate to the manufacturer's compliance with state and federal laws or regulations related to clean vehicles or EV purchases. Auto dealers are often unaware of a manufacturer's compliance status, as regulators usually determine compliance well after the time frame that's stated in this bill. The availability of a buyer incentive offered through the dealer should not therefore be linked to the manufacturer compliance. MDE's First Amendment removes this link, which we see as crucial to the successful implementation of the bill. Second, MDE proposes aligning the Maryland incentive with the federal clean vehicle credit purchase price caps. This would expand the incentive to vans, SUVs, and trucks and make it easier for consumers to understand that if they qualify for the federal incentive, then they also qualify for the state incentive. This amendment also aligns with a recommendation from the Maryland Commission on Climate Change. Finally, MDE is offering 2 amendments that would extend the EV rebate to nonprofit entities and provide a $1,000 rebate to purchasers of used EVs, similar to the bill that Delegate Lewis has. With these amendments, House Bill 689 would allow an EV buyer to obtain a point of sale rebate on the purchase of a more environmentally friendly vehicle, align the bill with the federal price caps, extend the rebate to nonprofit entities, and provide an incentive for the purchase of used EVs. Along with these other initiatives, this would enable the state to obtain its air quality and climate goals of lowering pollution for the transportation sector. Accordingly, MDE urges a favorable report with amendments for House Bill 689.
Thank you. I do not see any questions, so thank you both again. Jeremy, welcome back to the first branch of government.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We will now, if he's here, turn to Delegate Morgan's bill. There he is. Oh, sorry, I couldn't see you behind Jackie. He was like slouched back. I'm sorry. This is a constant problem up here where I'm always asking the vice chair of some members here, so. House Bill 653, St. Mary's County Delegation, exception for golf carts.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Ms. Vice Chairman, and to the funnest and best committee. I will start with this. If you know the song Eminem Without Me. Guess who's back? Back again. Todd's back. Tell a friend. So anyhow, I'm Todd Morgan, and I'm here to come back to repeat a little bit on a House bill on golf carts. My hope is that Mr. Delegate Stewart's bill will make it through, and I can withdraw this bill. But until I get clarity, I'm still here because I'm your friend. Basically, when I was here last year, the St. Mary's delegation introduced a golf cart bill. The question came back, where do you want the golf carts to be? In your literature, the St. Mary's County Commissioners have come back with a list of areas. All of the reasons that were discussed last year and by Delegate Stewart still apply. So I would hope for a favorable report to Delegate Stewart's bill so I can withdraw this bill. But if you can't get through Delegate Stewart's bill in the legislature on both sides, I keep my bill alive. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Delegate. Any questions on this bill? Okay, Bruce Gariano also signed up to testify for the county, but I don't think he's here anymore. Okay, well then that concludes the bill here on House Bill 653. So colleagues, a few announcements. First of all, I just want to thank the floor leaders on the bills we've had this week. Excellent job answering questions and providing information. Just a reminder about the schedule tomorrow. So I know you all have delegations or whatever else you have, but this committee will meet in this room at 12:30 for bill hearings, followed by a voting session. Doing 12:30 under the theory that you all have time to eat before that, so we can get through our there's chicken day that the vice chair is going to announce in a minute. So we'll be here probably 2 hours or so of bill hearings, depending on questions and so forth, followed by a voting session. So please eat beforehand, so you're able to do the work. And I kind of referenced it before, but do want to shout out Delegate Otto's birthday. Happy birthday. And with that, let's do committee announcements. Delegate Love.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Motor Vehicles and Transportation will meet at 5 o'clock. You all have the Zoom link. Let me know if you can't find it. Thanks.
And Chicken Day announcement, Madam Vice Chair.
Happy Thursday. Chicken Day is tomorrow at the Calvert House, 11 to 1. If you eat chicken, please join. If you don't,
Excellent. I think with that, we are adjourned. Thank you all.